Hello everyone, welcome to What If Issei was in Pacific Rim and becomes the strongest Jaeger movie. Before we start, please go support Guerrero Legends for writing that awesome fanfic. This is the translated version I made. There will be some mistake in character's gender, but of course Issei is a male. We were thought to be alone in the universe, but we never imagined that we were destined to face extinction. Two worlds in collision, two races at war. One alien with colossal monsters and the other the human race with its own monsters. A war where a young man has the greatest mission of all to change the course of human history. Prologue. The Haida family, an extremely wealthy family that owned a chain of restaurants, was very well known and rich, being in the top 2 of the most powerful families in Kwa, falling below the Gremry family. Although in the supernatural world it was highly respected by the demon faction for being one of the few tribes in the human world that still know how to handle ancient magic in addition to their children who were bearers of Drag, the great red dragon emperor, and the bearer of the divine sword, the second divine sword created by God. Although in reality they were not the only children of the Haida family, there was still one, and that was Issei Hayadu, the middle son of the family. He had not had a sacred gear or anything like that, but he still had good control of his family's magic, more than his brothers and parents had. Although for them it was not enough, they only paid attention to their brothers. They knew that Issei was better than them, but they still remained silent just to get their parents' attention without knowing that they were only harming their brothers. Issei, more than fed up with trying to improve to make his parents proud, decided to leave home. Of course, this did not matter to them. Issei decided to rent an apartment near Kwa Academy, where he had started his high school days. In the first year everything was calm, he was the best in the class, but in the first 2 weeks of his second year he began to be beaten and harassed by everyone. The reason was simple: he had been accused of treason to the school without any proof. During those 2 weeks he knew pain and humiliation. Although there was someone who had earned his trust and friendship, that person was Jez Yagami, a classmate of his. She was always there for him when he needed her the most. Their friendship grew until it became a great love. They both became boyfriends, and it was the best thing that had happened to them until Issei discovered something that broke his heart. Flashback. Issei was leaving the academy late. The reason simple: he had stayed to clean the classroom as punishment for not having paid attention in class. Issei was leaving the academy ready to go to his apartment until he heard a strange noise. Out of curiosity he decided to go for sure until he reached the academy bathrooms. He opened the door little by little until he saw something that left him shocked. There was his girlfriend riding a 3-year-old boy while her tongue was out. Jez, yeah, give me more, he said while sitting down. Student, now tell me what Issei is to you. Jez, Issei is nothing to me, he's just a simple toy. I'm all yours, she said, lost in pleasure. Issei, hearing that, only felt like his heart was breaking into 1,000 pieces, and even the sparkle in his eyes had been lost. Issei took off the tail that Jez had given him on their first date. Then he closed the door loudly, drawing the lover's attention, and then leaving the place. Jez and the boy quickly got dressed and left the bathroom, seeing that there was no one there. But the moment Jez stepped out of the bathroom, something like that had happened, seeing that it was the necklace he had given to Issei. End flashback. Since then, the brown-haired boy decided to remain alone. He was still bothered by all his companions without any proof that he was the true traitor of Kwe. Even his brothers bothered him. Now he was lying at the foot of a tree while he slept until he felt a stone thrown at him. Boy 1, look, it's the traitor Kwe, he said while holding a rock. Girl 2, let's bother him, she said while holding another stone. So everyone started throwing stones at him without stopping for 20 minutes, leaving Issei all covered in blood. The bell rang and Issei just got up as best he could and then went to his classroom while receiving everyone's mockery until he reached his classroom. Upon entering he could see how his place was all painted with insults, as well as having his backpack all broken. Issei, sigh, it seems like this is going to be a pretty long day, he said, and then sat down in his place. He was staring out the window as the rain fell until he heard the perverted duo talking about his ex-girlfriend. Matsuda, hey, do you know what happened to Jez-san? Motohama, they said he had fallen into depression. Issei decided not to continue listening until a certain Valkyrie entered who had a serious but sad expression. Note: here Rosways worked at the Qua Academy before Razor's Thing. Only he wasn't from the Gremory clan and he always supported the brown-haired boy. Ross, Issei-kun, the director wants to talk to you, he said sadly. Issei just nodded and took his things to head to the director's office while his classmates smiled. The brunette had arrived at the director's office and proceeded to enter, seeing the director who had a serious expression. Director, please sit down, young man. Issei, save your words and get straight to the point, he said seriously. Director, well, Issei, the reason I called you is that we have come to make a decision about you. Issei and Principal. Well, by decision of the students and some teachers we have come to the decision to expel you from the academy, she said seriously. Issei, okay. After all, I no longer wanted to be in a stupid academy where they only judge others without any proof, he said seriously, confusing the teacher to tell the truth. I'm glad I don't have to put up with them anymore. I had always tried hard to make them see the best in me. But I see that they are just idiots who only care about themselves and their reputation. Saying that, he left the director's office, leaving the aforementioned woman thoughtful somewhat about what he said. With Issei, he was leaving the academy with a serious face until he saw how right in front of him was a little girl playing with a ball while her mother watched her with a smile. The brown-haired boy thought that scene was tender, but then he saw how the girl's ball fell on the street, and she was going to pick it up until a car was a few meters away from hitting her. The brown-haired boy instinctively dropped his backpack and ran towards the girl, hugging her protectively while he received the blow, causing him to fly away, and all that under the gaze of the mother and some students of the academy. 1 week later, Issei could be seen lying in a hospital room while he was connected to a respirator. Then he slowly wakes up until he sees where he was. He takes off the respirator and starts looking around until he could notice a figure in the shadows sitting. It was Knight XD. Issei, who are you? How did I get here? You've been asleep for almost a week, boy. They brought you after your accident in order to protect that little girl. Issei, who are you? My name doesn't matter, you just have to know that a powerful and fearsome enemy is ready to attack, an enemy that will wipe out everyone if we decide to stay here without doing anything, he said seriously. I've been watching you, Issei Hayadu, and that's why you're joining the Jaeger program. Issei, Jaeger program? I'll explain it to you later. Now tell me, are you willing to give your life for your world? Issei just remained silent for a few minutes until he finally decided to give his answer to the mysterious man's question. Chapter 1. Qua Academy. 2 weeks after Issei's accident, all the students and teachers of the Qua Academy could be seen gathered in the gym, while a question invaded their minds during these 2 weeks, and it was if they did the right thing by expelling Issei. Jez, knowing what they had done, saw how her only chance to fix things with him had vanished. Rosways had become a very strict woman with her students, leaving them projects, and if they did not deliver them or if they did not do them as she wanted, they were failed. But then they see how the perverted girl from the academy, Ika Kiryu, goes up on a stage. Kiryu, good morning, teachers and schoolmates, he said, drawing everyone's attention. I'm sure you're wondering why I gathered you here today. Student 1, that's right. Kiryu, well, as you know, rumors had spread that Issei was the traitor who sold information about different clubs to rival schools. Murayama, and it's true. How good that what happened to him, he said with hatred and mockery. Kiryu, I hope you keep those words. Keitase, what do you mean? Kiryu, here, he said, showing his cell phone. Here I have the evidence to prove that Issei was never the traitor, as well as to prove who the real traitor is. Everyone paid attention to what he had said, and he immediately proceeded to show who Kwa's true traitor was, revealing that he was none other than Saji Genshiro. Kiryu, he is the real traitor, even though in reality I am also a traitor for having remained silent all this time, she said sadly. He had averaged helping me with my mother's medicines, but in the end he ends up receiving the hatred and disappointment of my own mother when I told her how I had gotten the money for her medicines. Everyone looked with great hatred at Saji, who was trembling from the fear he felt at that moment, until he received a big slap from his girlfriends Momo and Ruruko. Momo, I can't believe you did something like that. Ruruko, because of you, a good person is hurt. Director, Saji Genshiro, she said, calling the aforementioned for having betrayed the Qua Academy and having framed a good student. You are expelled, she said, full of hate. Saji was going to protest, but when he saw how everyone started booing him and throwing things at him, he decided to leave the place. Everyone remained in a deathly silence until the director decided to speak up. Principal, before you leave, I want some students to sign this document, she said, showing some sheets in her hand. Tsubasa, what is that, Madam Director? I asked, looking at the papers. Director, these papers are for young Issei to return to study at this academy. I just need the forms of some students to make it valid. I'm going to train her today, said a brown-haired girl with the same color eyes. I too, said a brunette with blue eyes. Jez and me. Director, okay, I already have the support of Hiro Hayadu, Hitomi Hayadu and Jez Yagami. Who else wants to support me with this? Everyone raised their hands while shouting to be allowed to sign. After that, the director along with some students and teachers went to the hospital where Issei was. Upon arriving, they stopped for a moment at the door to take a deep breath and then enter. Director, good afternoon, said approaching a nurse. Nurse, oh, good afternoon. How can I help you? Director, we came to look for a boy who arrived here by accident, Issei. Nurse, oh, that relative is already gone, she said, shocking everyone. Hitomi, what do you mean he's already gone? Nurse, yes, she left 2 hours ago with a man who seemed to be a naval general. Hiro, did he tell you where they were going? Nurse, that's right, he said he was going to the airport to catch his flight that left an hour ago, she said, making everyone sad. Well, if you don't have any other questions, I'll leave. I have a patient to see, he said as he left the place, leaving those present sad, especially Jez, who began to shed many tears as she ran out of the place. After they returned to the academy to inform the others that Issei Hayata had left the city, the Hayata brothers told their parents about this in addition to the manipulation of magic that he had, something that saddened them when they saw that they never took it into account. The students of the Qua Academy lost the spirit to continue with their studies. In addition to that, several of them were taken out of the academy by their parents for knowing what they did, saying that they did not deserve to study more. Hiro and Hitomi joined the Gremory clan with the possibility of being able to find their brothers more easily, while Jez remained locked up, regretting what she did to him. 1 year later, during that period of time, the Qua Academy has been attentive to the possible return of the brown-haired man until a threat of great size literally appeared, giant beasts capable of destroying everything in their path. The supernatural world decided to join humanity against this threat. Unfortunately, they could not do anything. They thought it was going to be the end of everyone without knowing that several brave people organized themselves to launch a program that they had planned to do since before this began, and among them was a certain brown-haired man who had been despised by everyone and was now going to become the only one in his class. Chapter 2. Dark Dimension. 1 year later. The Dark Dimension is a place beyond our world where only darkness and destruction exists. A place where there is absolutely no life except for that being that was locked in that place thousands of years ago, a being that had been classified as the greatest and most dangerous of the dragon gods. The one who had been locked in that place by God and Lucifer, Triaxa, the beast of the apocalypse, or the dragon goddess of the apocalypse. She had been locked in that place for fear of her power. It is true that she was strong, even stronger than Great Red and Ophis together, but she was never a threat as everyone in the supernatural world assumed. All she wanted was to be at peace. Explore the world and see the wonders that man could create, but for fear of her power she was locked in that dimension full of darkness and destruction. Thanks to that, she began to hate those of her kind. She hated being a dragon, she even hated her title. She always wondered when it was the last time she saw a little light. Now she found herself flying over a ruined city while a look of sadness appeared on her face. But then she heard something that caught her attention, and then she turned to the side, watching a building collapse, creating a large curtain of smoke. Triaxa, who's there? He asked seriously, since he knew that there was nothing in these parts. Show yourself, he demanded, while preparing to attack. In the smoke she could see a large figure with blue eyes that shone like intense flames, looking at her in an intimidating manner while growing at her. Triaxa, it seems you don't want to talk, huh? She said, ready to attack. Then I'm going to tear you to pieces. After saying that, the Triaxa throws himself at the great being while he does the same, ready to start their fight. Meanwhile, Underworld Meeting Room 4:45 a.m., the different faction leaders could be seen gathered together, as well as the leaders of the human world. the dragon gods, the Gremry entourage, Citri, Sigvaria, and Serorg to discuss the issue of the kaijus. Xerxes, have you heard anything new? Leader of Japan, we were able to defeat some kaijus, but it cost us many innocent lives. Azazel, despite having the help of Ophis and Great Red, we have not been able to have some advantage, he said while those mentioned clenched their fists due to the humiliations they went through because of those things. Michael, and what about that robot? I asked, drawing everyone's attention. Have you heard anything about that? Ajuka, no, we haven't heard anything. U.S. Leader, I know something about that, he said, drawing everyone's attention. Korean Leader, you knew and you didn't tell us? He asked angrily. U.S. Leader, I just heard about it. Well, gentlemen, ladies, let me introduce you to the man who created the Jaeger Stacker Pentecost program, he said as the aforementioned entered the meeting room accompanied by some guards. Pentecost, good afternoon, he said calmly. Yasaka, were you the one who created that robot? Pentecost, as the president said, I am in charge of the Jaeger program. I explained calmly. This program aims to create giant robots that can be piloted by two people who are neurally compatible. Odin, and why didn't he tell us anything about this? Pentecost, we have barely made any progress with this, and we need your support to continue moving the program forward. Yasaka, but what about the robot that protects the cities from those things? Pentecost, he is unique, Miss Yasaka. He was the first one I recruited, he said, drawing everyone's attention. We tried to make a Jaeger work with a single pilot, and the result was quite strange. Ajuka, what does that mean? Pentecost, he joined the Jaeger. Both ended up merging, creating something unique. U.S. Leader, a hybrid, half Jaeger, half human. Seraphal, but how did it happen? She asked, amazed by what they said, although she was not the only one. Pentecost, we don't know, it's something strange, but so far he has only focused on protecting others. But then they saw a magic circle appear in the ear of the Archangel Gabriel, who responded without further ado. Gabriel, hello? Slower please, what? Can you be clearer, what? That's impossible. Michael, Gabriel, what's wrong? Gabriel, the seal of the Triaxa is altered, he said, scaring the leaders of the factions. Penemu, but how is it possible? Azazel, will he be free? Gabriel, no, rather someone came in. Searches, and we can see what's going on in there. Michael, yes, Summer said, a magic circle. Everyone could see how the magic circle showed a city in ruins compared to normal, while a wounded silver-haired girl was seen walking through the streets of that city while holding her arm. Ophis, is that Triaxa? I asked incredulously. Big Red, what happened to him? Searches, what would be able to scare the beast of the apocalypse? But her answer was answered when she saw how the whole place began to shake as Triaxa slowly turned until she saw how the large creature that had attacked her came out of the buildings, showing that it seemed to be a huge crab. Those present at the meeting were shocked when they saw the creature, but when they noticed the strange marks on its body, they immediately knew that it was a kaiju. The question was how it had gotten there, but then they saw Triaxa start to run while tears fell down her face, and the great creature tried to catch her until she ran into an alley, hiding behind a garbage container. Triaxa, please, please, she said, crying, someone help me. Everyone was very shocked as they saw how the beast of the apocalypse was begging for help until they saw how the creature tried to reach it, causing it to give a great scream full of fear. Play the soundtrack above. Mexican Leader, we must go help her. Ophis, excuse me? Sorry, but we're not going to help that monster. King of Spain, why not? Great Red, she is a beast, the beast of the apocalypse. If we release her, it will be the end of us all. China's Leader, and what does that assure you? Paris Leader, just because he has that title doesn't mean he is like that. Everyone started arguing about it until one of the guards who was with Pentecost spoke up. Soldier, sir, he said, approaching Pentecost, they just told me about the base. Pentecost, what's happening? Soldier, Coyote Tango, sir, is gone. Pentecost, what? Kunu, look, he said, pointing at the magic circle. In that they see how a green flash appeared above the buildings where Triaxa and the kaiju were, and then a portal shaped like a whirlpool could be seen from which several helicopters came out of it, which had a giant robot attached to it which dropped the kaiju's tails. Triaxa could see how the kaiju had been pulled, and then she began to hear thunderous noises as well as the roars of the kaiju while she covered herself. Everyone could not believe what was happening. For 3 hours they heard what was a fight until they saw how a blue light appeared and then heard the kaiju's roar of agony, and then everything was silence. Stop the soundtrack above and play the one below. Triaxa, not hearing anything, assumed that everything was over. She prepared to leave the alley only to see various rubble everywhere as well as a liquid spilled everywhere. But when she looked to the side she could see the remains of kaiju which seemed to have been blown to pieces, leaving only half of her body. But then she heard a somewhat strange noise and turned around only to cover her eyes a little after seeing something she hadn't seen for a long time: the sunlight. At the meeting everyone was the same except Pentecost, who only had a smile. Everyone did not understand how the light of the sun was present in that place that was supposed to be only darkness. But when they saw that it calmed down a bit they managed to identify a large imposing figure. Triaxa, when seeing that figure, did not know what to say. She had never seen anything like it. Triaxa was speechless before that figure until she saw how some celestial rays surrounded him and then disappeared. She did not understand what happened. Where was she? Or where did she go? But then when she looked down she could see that there was a man who was wearing armor that was very identical to the large robot in front of her less than 2 minutes ago. Everyone at the meeting did not understand what was happening, but when they remembered that Pentecost had said that a person had merged with a Jaeger, they immediately assumed it was him. The subject approached Triaxa until he was a couple of meters from her. He proceeded to take off his helmet, revealing his identity, something that shocked the Citri and Gremry entourage, as well as Rossways and Yasaka and her daughter, since it was no one else and no one less than Issei Hayadu, who had some marks decorating his face while giving a sincere smile to Triaxa, who felt her heart beat by the hour as she looked at that smile of her savior. Chapter 3. Triaxa looked in great astonishment at Issei, who remained in the same place while smiling at her until she received a message from one of the helicopters which were flying around the area where they were looking for another kaiju, but they found nothing in that place but destruction and darkness. Soldier, sir, we have already checked the entire area. There are no more kaiju here, he said through the communicator. It is time to return to base. Issei, understood, he said, cutting off the communication and then putting on his helmet. At that, a blue glow surrounds him and intensifies further, causing Triaxa to cover her eyes and then open them to see Issei in his Jaeger form, who looked at her one last time and then began to walk towards the portal that had formed behind him. Triaxa instinctively began to run towards him while yelling at him. Triaxa, hey wait, she shouted, drawing Jaeger's attention, who turned to look at her and then crouched down. Please let me go with you, she begged as a few tears fell down her cheeks. Soldier, sir, you have to get out of here quickly. You know that the portal cannot be kept open for my time, he said, waiting for the Jaeger to summarize his path. Coyote Tango thought about it for a few seconds until he put his left hand next to Triaxa with his palm open as a sign for her to get on. Triaxa wasted no time getting on his hand, and Corte Tango summarized his way towards the portal while receiving a communicator from one of the helicopters. Soldier, sir, you know that we cannot take Triaxa with us. If you do, you will have to face serious consequences, he said, making Triaxa think that he was going to abandon her. Coyote Tango, then I will assume the consequences, he said while his thick voice echoed throughout the place. Triaxa could only feel very happy about that, since after thousands of years he could see the outside world again, and all thanks to his savior. So Coyote Tango and company proceeded to leave the dark dimension with Triaxa and all under the sight of the leaders who were at the meeting, who saw how the image disappeared as soon as Jaeger left the dark dimension. Underworld meeting room. All the leaders of the Supernatural World Alliance were there with their jaws dropped as they watched how a human had brought out of that dimension, being them considered the most powerful and dangerous existence in the supernatural world. Pentecost. Well, I'd better get going so I can talk to Coyote Tango, he said, ready to leave until. Xerxes, take us to the base where they have that robot, he said seriously while staring at Pentecost. Pentecost, I'm not intimidated by Xerxes Gremry. I've already faced beings more dangerous than you, he said facing him, and I've seen the dead woman so closely that I even lost my fear of her. Michael, but we must return the Triexa to the seal. Azazel, you don't know how dangerous she can be. Ophis, you are a monster. Pentecost, I trust the decisions of my soldiers, and if Coyote Tango decided to take her out of that place, it is because he saw that she was not dangerous, he said, facing Ophis. Ophis, who do you think you are to talk to me like that? Pentecost, someone who is more likely to fight the Kaijas than you, girl, he said threateningly, silencing Ophis. Queen of France, excuse me, sir, but I would like to visit that place where those giant robots are. What did you say their names were? Pentecost, Jaegers, and no problem. Yasaka, we would like to go too, she said as she approached with her daughter. He saved my little girl's life before, and I would like to thank him. Rossways, he was a great student of mine, and I would like to be able to talk to him to find out how he has been. Pentecost, okay, you can come, he said while a portal opened behind them. Okay, let's go, he said, crossing it. He passed by his guards and the leaders of both worlds with their respective companions. Shatterdome Jaeger Station 1600 hours HRS. The portal began to open, revealing Pentecost and his companions, who were impressed to see that they were in one of the Jaeger stations. Pentecost, welcome to China, he said, walking towards an elevator. I will show you the facilities, and then I will explain to you what the situation will be like from now on, he said, operating the elevator. Gabriel, and tell me, what are you? Pentecost, we have been considered the resistance, he said as the elevator stopped, but in reality we are the army. Seraphal, so the army, huh? Pentecost, that's right, we have 20 bays with 30 Jaegers each, he said, entering the hangars, but we will only show you the biggest ones. But then Ophis focuses her gaze on a certain silver-haired girl who was contemplating the Shatterdome. Ophis, there's Triexa, he said, pointing at the silver-haired girl, causing everyone to get into a fighting mood while Pentecost approaches her. Pentecost, so you must be Triexa, he said, standing in front of her as if nothing had happened. Triexa, huh? Oh, that's right, and who are you? Pentecost, I am Marshal Pentecost, and I am the one who made all this possible. Triexa, seriously, aren't you afraid of me? Pentecost, why should I? If Coyote Tango believes you are not a threat, there is no reason to fear you. Rias, but she's a monster. Pentecost, enough, I order now, come on, I'll introduce you to the biggest Jaegers there are. Ajuka, how? Pentecost, China's Crimson Typhoon, one of the largest, he said, pointing to the Jaeger. Pentecost, built in Chansu, titanium structure without alloys, 50 engines say per muscle fiber. It is piloted by the Wentega triplet brothers, locals. They have successfully defended the port of Hong Kong 7 times, I explain while watching the pilots play basketball. They use the old technique of the 3 arms. Very effective, by the way. Hero, it's incredible. Pentecost, yes it is, but let's go with the next one of the last T-90 Cherno Alpha. Pentecost, one of the oldest and heaviest Jaegers in service, but make no mistake, it is a brutal war machine and is piloted by Sasha and Alexis Wilkins. Odin Russians? Pentecost, that's right, and believe me, you wouldn't want to mess with them. Pentecost, now let's move on to the largest of the Model 3s, Gypsy Danger. Pentecost, unalloyed titanium structure, 60 motors per muscle fiber and a fluid synapse system, as well as having a dual-core nuclear reactor. Triexa, it's amazing, she said very excitedly. 5 minutes later. Pentecost, Herc, Chuck, welcome to Hong Kong, gentlemen, he said as he approached a man in his 50s and his 25-year-old son. Herc, wait here, he said, walking towards his friend and company. So they are the leaders of the factions. As I see, they did not expect that we humans could do all this. Pentecost, the Herc Hansen, a friend from the glory days of the Model 1. Herc, I know her. She was rescued by Coyote Tango today, he said, shaking Triexa's hand. Triexa, that's right, and I'm very grateful to him for that. Herc, thanks to him all this is possible, and we hope to have your support. Triexa, of course, sir. Pentecost, Herc and his son Chuck are in charge of Striker Eureka. Herc, the fastest Jaeger of all, the first of the Model 5. Kunu, it's fantastic. Herc, yes it is, but it doesn't compare to what's coming. Aquino, era, what does that mean? At that, the doors of the Shatter Dome opened, revealing Coyote Tango, who was on a walking platform while he remained still and was taken to one of the hangars. Pentecost, Miss Triaxa, you had the great privilege of meeting Coyote Tango in person. Herc, the oldest Jaeger of all, the first of the Model Ones, as well as being the only one of his kind, he said as Coyote Tango passed in front of him. Barraquil, it's because it's a hybrid, as he said. Herc, that's right, also for being the strongest among all the Jaegers. Voice, Coyote Tango to Hangar 23 for repairs, sounding all over the place. Repeat, Coyote Tango to Hangar 23 for repairs. In that, everyone sees how the Jaeger headed to the indicated hangar while Pentecost continued showing the place to the leaders. Although there were some who wanted to stay, Triaxa only approached the hangar where Coyote Tango was and saw how they proceeded to repair it. While a smile it was marked on her face. Triaxa, thank you very much for saving me, she said, watching how they repaired Coyote's damaged parts as well as reloading his cannons. Chapter 4. Shatterdome Meeting Room, 18:30 p.m. All the leaders of the world were gathered together, as well as the supernatural world, while in the middle of them was Marshal Pentecost, accompanied by the pilots of the Jaeger Gypsy Danger, Raleigh Beckett, and his co-pilot Mako Mori. The atmosphere was somewhat tense in the place. You could notice some of the leaders of the supernatural world looking at Marshal Pentecost with some hostility, especially the Haida brothers, since for them he turned their beloved brother into a weapon. Azazel, so what are we waiting for? He asked, somewhat bored. Pentecost, we are waiting for Herc and his son as well as my best soldier, he said when out of nowhere Herc and his son entered, pulling a Triaxa by both arms while she had a tender pout. Herc, she didn't want to leave the hangar where Coyote Tango was, so we decided to bring her. Chuck, we decided, it sounds like a pact to me, he said, somewhat annoyed. Triaxa, it's not fair, she said tenderly, making almost everyone faint. I wanted to be there. Pentecost, don't worry, miss, he's going to accompany us too. Hitomi, is he going to accompany us too? She asked happily. Pentecost, I have been informed that they have already finished repairing it, so it should be here at any moment. Then the doors opened, revealing Issei, who had his hair gray, his eyes sky blue, and some scars decorating his face. Issei, Coyote Tango reporting, sir, he said while positioning himself next to Pentecost while Triaxa stayed by his side. Pentecost, well, since we are all gathered, let's start the meeting, he said calmly while the Gremory and Citri stared at Issei, as did Rossways and Yasaka. Opening of the story. The meeting began. The Marshal had explained in detail what the Jaeger program was and how it worked, how 2 pilots were required to support the Jaeger neural interface, the different models that existed from Model 1 to 5, the skills that each Jaeger could have in addition to the potential of the pilots. Odin, he's saying that in order to pilot one of those things you need to be Raleigh, entering the neural link with Jaeger through memory, the stronger the link. Mako, you better fight, he said with a smile. Ajuka, but what about him? I asked, pointing at Issei. Pentecost, as I explained, he is unique. Seraphal, but don't you know how that happened? She said with her typical magical girl poses, making Sona feel embarrassed. Tendo, the truth is I could never find out what happened. All the data that was shown during the neural test was normal, he said without understanding what had happened, but the strangest thing is that every time I check his systems, the data keeps increasing, more and more. It's as if Azazel, if it were evolving, day by day. Interesting, he said without taking his eyes off the gray-haired man. Issei just stood there still while looking at those present until Hitomi began to approach him, while some tears fell down her cheeks as Hiro did, both slowly approaching the gray-haired man, who turned to look at them while having a neutral look. Hitomi, Oniai-chan, you don't know how long we've been looking for you, she said, trying not to cry. Hiro, I wish your accident came to light, and we are truly sorry for pushing you aside. Issei, Hitomi Hayadu, bearer of the Divine Sword, and Hiro Hayadu, bearer of the Booster Gear, what do you want? He asked, seeing how the Hayadu were left with their eyes wide open. Hitomi, Oniai-chan, we just wanted to tell you that. Issei, excuse me Hitomi Hayadu, but I am not your Oniai-chan and I will never be, he said seriously while looking at her in a neutral way. Hiro was going to proceed to hit his brother, but he had been stopped by Triaxa, who only had one finger raised. Triaxa, what do you think you're going to do? I asked seriously. Hero, this is none of your business, beast of the apocalypse, he said seriously. Triaxa, he saved me, so it's my concern, she said while sending him crashing against a wall. Great Red Triaxa, if you don't want me to, I didn't finish when I saw Issei's cold gaze. Issei, don't threaten her in front of me, he said seriously. Herc, there's no need to start a fight right here, he said, trying to avoid a possible fight. Raleigh, how about we finish the meeting and then you guys come out and fight? He said seriously. Pentecost, I agree, he said equally seriously. In order to face these things we have to work together, all of us. Xerxes, give us Issei Hayato and consider it safe for him to be on this ridiculous show, he said seriously. Mako, and why should we do that? She said very seriously, since she considered Issei as a brother. Rias, he belongs to the supernatural world with us, and it would be a very good idea to make him my pawn, she said while taking out a pawn piece. Pentecost, I'm sorry, but I'm not going to give away one of my soldiers as if they were just disposable objects, he said seriously and angry about that. Herc, Issei is like a member of this big family we've made here, and we don't have to give it to him unless he wants it. Hitomi, you are not your family, we are your family, she shouted angrily. Chuck, well, we were more brothers to him than you, he said angrily, facing the Circuitii. Hero, you're not his brother. Raleigh, and you weren't much of a brother, so to speak. Everyone started arguing until Rossways and Yasaka decided to put an end to this ridiculous argument. Yasaka, enough, she shouted angrily, he is the only one who can choose whether to stay with them or come with us. Rossways, you're right. Besides, we have no right to force him to come with us if he doesn't want to, she said equally angry. Issei just thanked him for his support, but then the marshal's communicator rang, making him become serious with what he heard. Raleigh, everything okay, sir? I asked, seeing the marshal's condition. Pacific Ocean, the abyss. The flames of this had intensified, as well as some rays covered it until a large creature emerged from the abyss. Shatterdome Bridge, 19:30 p.m. All the leaders were gathered together, as well as some pilots and Issei. Tendo. At 7 p.m. the abyss opened, giving a double event. Both of Category 4, code names Odachi and Great Backs, will arrive in Kyoto in the area of the Kingdom of the Yokai in 1 hour. Pentecost. Okay, I want those civilians and those yokai be you wanted now, he said seriously, and then named the Jaeger's Crimson Typhoon, Cherno Aloha. I want them in shallow waters, he said, receiving an acknowledgement from both teams. Coyote Tango, I want you behind his back guarding the coast. We can't lose you. You're unique and we still have to know more about you. Is that clear? Issei, yes sir, he said while wearing his Coyote Tango armor. Pentecost, okay, move now, I ordered. Issei was about to leave until he was grabbed by the arm by Triaxa, who looked worried. Treeks, promise me you'll come back, he said with tears coming out of his face. Issei, I'll be back, he said before leaving to fulfill the mission that he swore to the two teams, while Triaxa looked at where the Great Danger went while feeling great concern for him, something that surprised all the supernatural beings. Chapter 5. You could see how the Jaeger's Cherno Alpha and Crimson Typhoon were hooked by several helicopters leaving from the top of the Shatterdome, while Coyote Tango opened a gate with his own hands and began to walk in the same direction where the other two Jaegers were heading, while the Shatterdome, the bridge, could be seen with all the leaders along with Pentecost and the other pilots as they watched the Jaegers who were moving away from the place. Pentecost, start with the ground portal, Mr. Choi. Tendo. Of course, sir, he said, starting to press buttons. Land portal activated now, he said while a portal opened in front of the Jaegers. Azazel, and what is that? He asked, somewhat fascinated by that. Raleigh, an Earth portal. It allows us to travel anywhere on Earth. Ajuka, incredible, it's very surprising what they achieved. Seraphal, but does it work? I asked somewhat doubtfully. Mako, see for yourself. After saying that, they see how the Jaegers crossed the portal to appear in the things of the Yokai Kingdom. Coyote Tango was walking along the coast while he watched as Cherno Alpha and Crimson Typhoon moved away a little further. Coyote Tango, bridge in position and ready for action, he said, communicating with the Shatterdome. Pentecost, stay in your position and do not intervene unless necessary, he responded through the communicator. Open your eyes wide. These Category 4 are the largest kaijus we have seen in size and weight. At this point, the helicopters that had Cherno Alpha and Chris Sun Typhoon attached stopped a little far from the coast. Alexia, Cherno Alpha ready for action, initiating release, she said, releasing the hooks of the helicopters falling into the water just like Crimson Typhoon while Coyote Tango stayed in position away from them. Alexia, Cherno Alpha in position, Cherno Alpha watching the coast, lighthouse on, she said, moving forward while she was accompanied by Crimson Typhoon. In the Shatterdome, everyone watched with great seriousness what was happening while Triaxa was the only one who watched with great concern as Coyote Tango continued to hold his position. Pentecost, Miss Yasaka, he said, drawing her attention, I recommend that you contact your daughter in Kyoto to evacuate the entire kingdom. Yokai Kingdom. In a room there was a certain yokai girl who was lying on her bed while a certain boredom was noticeable on her face. The simple reason, she wanted to accompany her mother to the Shatterdome, but her mother sent her straight home. Kunu, it's not fair what Oka-san did. I wanted to meet the one who had saved my life before, she said, pouting until a magic circle appeared on her ear. Yasaka, Kunu, are you there? She asked, somewhat upset. Kunu, what's wrong, Oka-san? Yasaka, those things that started attacking us, the kaijus. Nod, yep. Yasaka, they're heading towards Aya, she said, scaring her daughter. There are 2 Category 4, 3 Jaegers including the one who saved the Triaxa will try to stop them, but you have to evacuate the entire city just in case now. Kunu, I'll do it right away, Oka-san. After saying that, she left her room in a hurry towards a tower in which there was a large horn. She blew it, making it clear to her entire kingdom that they should evacuate as soon as possible, while she looked at the coast where she could see Coyote Tango, who was still maintaining his position. Kunu, so there it is. On the coast, Crimson Typhoon and Cherno Alpha continued to monitor the coast as they moved forward until something appeared on the right side of the Chinese Jaeger. Pilot 1, women 60 yen, 60 yen Yudongshi, we have something at 6. At 6 they turned around, seeing nothing, until suddenly the great kaiju Odachi appeared in front of them. Odachi had given them a powerful tail whip, causing Crimson Typhoon to fall, but he got up while preparing to fight the great kaiju, which was waiting for his move. Pilot 2, Shienzai Chiufanyu Moshi, now in defensive mode, he said while activating some locks in his hands ready to counterattack. Odachi tried to knock him down again, but Crimson Typhoon began to make several cuts in the kaiju's flesh while using the thrusters on his back to hit the cuts faster until 2 of his 3 arms were held by Odachi, but it only made Crimson Typhoon use all his thrusters, getting behind him and then throwing him away. Odachi tried to get up, but then he received an attack by Cherno Alpha, which proceeded to give him a series of blows until he received a powerful tail whip that made him fall. Coyote Tango, Bridge, the Typhoon and Alpha are in trouble. I'm going to help, he said through the communicator. Pentecost, stay where you are and don't intervene. We need you alive, he replied. In the fight, Crimson Typhoon tried to attack Odachi from behind, but Odachi hit him in the head with his tail and then held him with it, piercing Typhoon's helmet. Coyote Tango, Bucket, I'm not going to stay here and watch them get killed, he said angrily. Bridge, I'm going to help you whether you like it or not, he replied, while Pentecost just hit the table in frustration. In the fight, Odachi had proceeded to tear off Crimson Typhoon's head, killing the pilots and leaving Jaeger incapacitated. Alexis, Abity Crimson Killer to Crimson, he said angrily. Alexia, let me tell you this son of a hitch because you're talking about shit. Cherno Alpha headed to attack Odachi head-on, unaware that he had made a huge mistake as the kaiju had thrown a powerful punch at him that began to melt his helmet. Alexia, Cherno Alpha, he threw some kind of acid at us, she said while watching the acid infiltrate. Coyote Tango, I'm not going to wait any longer, he shouted, starting to run towards where Cherno Alpha was. Alexia, Cherno Alpha, we need support now. Coyote Tango, hold on Cherno, I'm coming, he shouted as he ran as fast as he could to his position. Cherno Alpha tried to resist as much as he could against Odachi until Coyote Tango arrived at his position, but then something happened that no one saw coming. The other kaiju, Big Back, had appeared behind Cherno Alpha, hanging on top of him and starting to tear him to pieces while Odachi went against Coyote Tango. Alexia, Voda Postapayat V reactor, she screamed as they were shaken by Big Back. Big Back began to dismantle Cherno Alpha while Odachi tried to attack Coyote Tango, but only began to receive a beating from him since when he was a few centimeters away from him he was received by a blow, and then he was grabbed by the head, and received more blows from Coyote Tango. Coyote Tango, yes, take it with more power, yes, he said, giving him a blow that knocked him down. With Cherno Alpha, this one began to be hit while it was underwater, causing the pilots to drown, but in that Big Back takes the pilot's cabin and makes it explode, killing them. In the Shatterdome. Tendo, we lost Cherno, sir, he said seriously, causing Pentecost to hit the table. Now everyone was a little worried since there was only one Giga left in the fight, and that was Coyote Tango, the most important of all. But the one who was most worried was Triaxa. Yasaka and Rossways were also very worried, but Triaxa was the most worried about him. In the fight, Coyote Tango had grabbed Odachi by the tail and the nape of his neck and lifted him up while giving a great war cry and then throwing him far away. Coyote Tango, activating cannons, call activating his cannons. But before even firing them, Big Back began to create a blue sphere on his back and then created an electromagnetic pulse, causing Coyote Tango to become inactive. In the Shatterdome, everyone had seen that and couldn't believe what had happened, but Triaxa along with Yasaka and Rossways had been quite worried about Coyote, seeing that he didn't move. Pentecost, what was that? Tendo, an electromagnetic pulse, blocking the Jaeger's systems, he said seriously. Pentecost, Coyote Flame Tango. Tendo, I can't, the Model 1 is fried, it will take me 2 hours to entertain the auxiliary, all Jaegers are digital. Raleigh, not all Marshall, Gypsy is analogous, nuclear. Pentecost, okay, get ready for. Ophis, hey Triaxa, where is she? She asked, drawing everyone's attention. But they felt a slight tremor as well as a loud bang and saw one of the gates broken. Herc, what the hell was that? At that, everyone left the Shatterdome, seeing many lightning bolts as well as a large figure moving away from the place, making it clear to everyone that Triaxa had gone to save Coyote Tango. Chapter 6. Big Back slowly approached Coyote Tango, who remained motionless after having received the electromagnetic pulse that the Kaiju had released while Odachi was retreating from the area to begin attacking the Yokai Kingdom. The Yakai had already evacuated 65% of the city starting from the coast. But Odachi had already arrived, starting with the great wave of destruction, killing several yokais while others tried to stop him. But unfortunately it was useless. Everyone was heading to Yasaka Castle to take refuge, while Princess Kunu watched in the distance as Odachi was destroying everything in his path. Yokai, Princess Kunu, the evacuation is at 75%, he said as he watched Kunu clench her fists because of the helplessness she felt. Kunu, that damn thing. It destroys my home as if it had everything right to do so, she said angrily while shedding several tears. Yokai, Princess Kunu, we must go to the shelter now. Kunu, hide while several risked their lives to stop that damn monster, she said as she looked out to sea, seeing Coyote Tango standing there without showing any sign of being active while Big Back watched him. Please help us, she begged as she shed many tears. At sea, Big Back looked at Coyote Tango's face, who remained still. Big Back gave him a light punch in the face, causing him to move a little. Big Back began to move around Coyote Tango, and then proceeded to try to destroy him, only to hear large thunder fall very close to him. Big Back turned around, seeing a large storm approaching its position. Yokai Realm. Kunu had seen the storm and knew who it was. On the one hand she was happy, but on the other she felt some fear. But then she saw it. She saw how it came down from the sky as if it were thunder to proceed to attack Great Back, sending several meters back. It was her, the great beast of the apocalypse, the strongest dragon god, Triaxa, had arrived to protect Coyote Tango. Now she was staring at Big Back, who had stood up while getting into position, while Triaxa stood up on 2 legs and spread her wings to both sides while giving a great roar and then going to attack Big Back, who had done the same. Triaxa ran Big Back and then swiped at him, while the kaiju gave her a huge blow, making her step back. The great dragon had spat out a large flame of black fire that hit the kaiju full on, which began to advance little by little until it was in front of Triaxa, grabbing her by the neck to proceed to throw her roughly. Then he grabbed her by the tail and threw her at the feet of Coyote Tango, who still remained motionless. Triaxa, I will not allow you to hurt my first friend, ever, he roared, spitting out a large flame of fire. In the Shatterdome, Everyone was quite surprised to see how Triaxa fought Big Back without any fear and all to protect Coyote Tango. Tendo, Raleigh prepared to go there, he said while the aforementioned agreed. Tendo, I don't think I'll make it in time. Chuck, what do you mean, Tendo? Tendo, Big Back altered the Earth portal. I can't use it without risking sending them somewhere else. Pentecost, how long will it take you to fix it? Tendo, 2 hours at most. Herc, there's no time. Once you repair it, the city will be reduced to nothing. Everyone was thinking about what to do. The supernatural beings offered to take them in magic circles, but they didn't know if they could make ones huge enough for a Jaeger. Even the dragon gods thought about it until Pentecost decided to speak. Pentecost, put me through to Coyote Tango, he said seriously. Tendo, sir, Model 1 does not respond as expected. Pentecost, I know he will listen to me, so put me through him. Tendo did as requested, entering into communication with Coyote Tango while Triaxa tried to confront Big Back, although in reality she was being defeated by that kaiju. Pentecost, Coyote Tango, do you receive me? He said without receiving an answer. Coyote Tango, do you receive me? He said with the same result. Issei, listen to me very carefully, you have to wake up, you have to fight. Right now several lives are in danger, he said seriously, especially her, the girl you swore to protect. Now she is fighting to protect you, you have to fight too, he said seriously. Triaxa was badly injured as she tried to get up but was held by the neck by Big Back while blood was pouring from her snout. Pentecost, wake up Issei and save her, I shouted demandingly. At that, Coyote Tango woke up only to see how Big Back was going to proceed to kill Triaxa, and that he holds him by the arm, making him turn around and then surround his fist with some blue rays and then hit Big Back with great force, sending him flying while he released Triaxa. She, seeing that Coyote Tango had saved her once again, just smiled, but then she sees how he approaches to see her condition. Coyote Tango, you shouldn't have risked yourself like that, he said, seeing the wounds he had. Triaxa, I should have tried, she said while some tears fell down her cheeks. Coyote Tango, you were very brave for that, he said while grabbing his paw. But then they hear Big Back's roar, causing them to snap out of their moment. Coyote Tango turns around only to see the kaiju heading towards them at high speed. Coyote Tango did the same, prepared to protect Triaxa. Imagine it's Coyote Tango. Big Back tried to create another electromagnetic pulse, but in that Coyote Tango dodged a blow from the kaiju and then hung on his back and proceeded to tear off the thing that causes the electromagnetic pulse. But in that the kaiju held him tightly with a hug and then he threw him with all his strength, reaching the dock of the yokai kingdom. Triaxa, seeing what had happened, tried to confront the kaiju, but only hit her, pushing her aside and then heading to where she had fallen. Coyote Tango was getting up from the hard blow he had taken after falling and then saw Big Back heading towards him while giving a loud roar. Coyote Tango also did the same, ready to start the first assault that the two of them were going to have, although Coyote Tango was going to be kaiju puree for what he had done to the Triaxa. Chapter 7. Coyote Tango and Big Back ran against each other, ready to start a fight from which only one would come out alive. Big Back was going to proceed to hit Coyote, but he made a great jump propelled by rockets on his back, connecting a great blow to the head, stunning the great kaiju. But in that he grabs him by the head to start giving him a series of blows until he gave one much stronger than the others. Coyote Tango, turbo rocket now, he claimed before slamming his fist hard into Big Back's face. But then Big Back grabbed a huge heavy rock and proceeded to smash it all over Coyote Tango's face, knocking him down. But Coyote Tango managed to get up and hit him hard while his fists were covered in blue lightning. But then he grabbed him by the back and threw him a few meters, causing him to crash into a building, causing it to collapse on top of him. Coyote Tango, go ahead, ugly, I'm not done with you yet, he said while provoking Big Back. The great kaiju went out at full speed against the Jaeger to try to ram it. But Coyote Tango managed to support its weight, but that did not take away the fact that the kaiju would manage to make it retreat. Coyote began to shoot several energy discharges at the right side of the kaiju, blowing up almost half of his body, killing him just before falling into the water, and then pushing Big Back's corpse so he could communicate with Triaxa. Coyote Tango, Triaxa, are you okay? I asked without receiving an answer. Triaxa, answer me please. Triaxa, yes, I'm fine, just a little bruised, she said with some difficulty. Coyote Tango, stay where you are, I'll come for you. Triaxa, no, you have V to stop the other kaiju. I'm fine, he said as he tried to get up. Coyote Tango, but. Pentecost, Triaxa is right, Coyote Tango, go stop Odachi before he takes more innocent lives. We will take care of getting Triaxa out of there. Coyote Tango, okay sir, he said and then turned around seeing the yokai city on fire. With Kunu, she was in the underground shelter of her kingdom with all the yokais who had been saved from Otachi's attack. Everything was calm and silent until they heard a loud noise accompanied by a tremor, scaring everyone. Kunu, it's upon us, she said. It would be only to feel another tremor accompanied by another rumble. It's here. It's trying to get in. In that, Otachi's roar was heard as well as another rumble and tremor as the yokais became more scared. But Kunu tried to stay calm in order to protect her people, although she had to admit that she was very scared. But then she saw how the roof began to break until a part of it fell, leaving the outside visible. The yokai were scared by that. But there was no sign of Odachi, so they thought he was gone. But then Kunu decided to try to look out very carefully. Yokai, Princess Kunu, don't go, I'm back, he whispered as he watched Kunu peek through the hole, seeing her kingdom destroyed until Odachi appeared out of nowhere to try to catch her. Kunu managed to get back, but in that moment Odachi stuck his tongue in the shelter, and from it began to emerge 3 tentacles that held the little yokai, who was grabbed by several guards to try to save her. Kunu, damn you, let me go, she said while her people tried to save her. At that, a yokai unsheathed his sword and cut the tentacles, causing him to release Kunu, while Odachi gave a great roar of pain, and then tried to break the floor/ceiling to try to catch the little yokai and kill the rest. Yokai 1, he's coming in, she said, scared. Yokai 2, no, please, she said, the same as the other one. Yokai 1, someone stop him, I screamed in despair. Kunu just looked at her people who were filled with terror. She didn't want them to suffer anymore, so she decided to go out to confront Odachi, but before moving a muscle she heard a noise, like that of a ship. Odachi realized to know what it was, and the yokais looked out, seeing that it was Coyote Tango, who was walking towards Odachi while carrying a ship in his hand. Coyote Tango, hey ugly, do you want to chew something? Then try this. After saying that, Coyote Tango began to hit Odachi with the ship, causing him to spit blood, while the yokais looked at him in amazement until the kaiju held the ship with his tail and began to struggle with Coyote Tango, causing the ship to fly away, crashing into the castle doors. Odachi used his tail to hit Coyote so hard that he sent him flying a few meters. The Jaeger quickly got back up, starting to chase the kaiju, but when he almost reached it he lost sight of it in a turn and began to walk slowly, and with his guard up in case it appeared. Coyote Tango, I can't fix it, it moves too fast, he said, trying to find Odachi helicopter. Do you see it? Over. He stopped for a few seconds to get an answer until he saw a building next to him begin to collapse, and Odachi came out and slammed him face first into a building, but Coyote responded by hitting him a few times to try to finish him off with a shock. But unfortunately Odachi dodged him and then began to go through a building using Coyote Tango's body. After finishing going through it, he pushed him to use his acid, but Coyote had barely managed to dodge him, causing him to crash into a building behind him. In that he sees that it would be a big problem, so he tries to tear off his tongue, but in that his long arm had been held by the kaiju's tail, which tried to tear off his head with the claw he had at the end of it. Coyote Tango, activating left side coolant, he claimed as the coolant suddenly came out, hitting Otachi's tail. With Kunu, she was driving all the yokai away from the kingdom until a light illuminated them, revealing that it was an evacuation ship from which Yasaka emerged and hugged her daughter. Yasaka, Kunu is very worried, he said, hugging her tightly. Kunu, I'm fine mom, calm down, he said while hugging her anyway. Hiro, and where is he? I asked, leaving the ship. Hitomi, where is my brother? But they do hear Otachi's roars of pain as well as the sounds made by Coyote Tango's horn, while several rumbles were also heard coming from the kingdom. Pentecost, my queen, it is best to continue evacuating the entire place, he said seriously as he got off the ship. Yasaka, but what will happen to Pentecost? He'll be fine, believe me. He's a very tough man to kill, he said, and then used a communicator. I want you to go to where Triaxa is and take her to the ship now, he ordered, and then boarded the ship. In the fight, Coyote Tango had already managed to freeze Otachi's tail, and then proceed to break it into pieces and tear off the kaiju's tongue. But in that Odachi jumps on him and digs his foot claws into his back and then grows large wings. The kaiju took flight while causing Coyote Tango to crash into some buildings. With Pentecost, he was on the evacuation ship and played all the survivors of the kingdom as well as the faction leaders and the dragon gods. Yokai 1, look over there, he said, pointing to a specific point. Everyone turned around to see Odachi rise into the air while carrying Coyote Tango in his claws. The flight tried to break free until they were lost in the sky. Pentecost, I don't like this at all. Hero, we have to go help him. Hitomi, he's right, she said, being supported by the girls. Azazel, they can't do anything. Even if they manage to distract that monster, how will they be able to prevent the robot from falling? He said, leaving them silent. I would already consider that robot dead. Ross, how can you say that? So everyone started to argue while Pentecost looked at the sky waiting for Coyote to have a plan to save himself, but then a big blue light illuminated the sky accompanied by the great roar of the kaiju called everyone's attention. Pentecost, you already have a plan, right? 5 minutes earlier, Coyote Tango was hitting Odachi to force him to let go, but he only put more force, making Coyote let go of him as they rose higher and higher. Coyote Tango, damn, I have to hold on. There are only 10 seconds left to use the cannons, he said while being raised higher and higher. The kaiju showed no sign of stopping while Coyote Tango tried to do something else to free himself until an alarm sounded indicating that the cannons were ready, so without further ado he grabbed the kaiju by the neck and pointed it at his chest. Coyote Tango, see you on the other side, damn it, he said, firing the cannons, blowing up the kaiju's torso. I think I should have thought better of it, he said, starting to fall. With Pentecost, he was watching what was happening until Odin called everyone's attention. Odin, look, he said, pointing to the sky where the figure of Coyote Tango could be seen on fire. Pentecost, it can't be, he said, and then tried to communicate with Coyote Tango. Issei, listen to me, you have to release the shock absorbers, it's your only way out. Triaxa, Issei, she said, worried about him. Everyone saw how Coyote Tango fell without any control. They thought it was going to be the end of him. Coyote Tango, I'm falling very fast, nobody comes closer, he shouted, falling to the ground, creating a large current as well as raising a lot of dust. Everyone thought he couldn't survive a fall like that, but they saw something moving in the dust. Everyone thought it was another enemy until they asked to visualize that it was Coyote Tango, who got up like a champion, causing everyone to start applauding as they shouted his name, while Triaxa wiped away her tears seeing her hero well. Chapter 8. It's been a week since the kaiju attack. Everything has been calm. The war clock kept running without resetting while the pilots and their teams made improvements to their Jaegers. But for Issei, everything was very calm and boring at the same time. Since what happened, he has been under review almost all week, where it was shown that every second he evolved more and more to the point where they saw that it was no longer necessary for them to try to repair it every time he finished a fight, since he literally self-repaired, something that impressed everyone. But they also knew that he had a limit and that he could see wounds from which he would not be able to recover. There were also several attempts by the supernatural beings to stay with Issei, from trying to compromise him with an heiress to challenge him to a raiding game. But as always, he rejected them, or even his companions threatened all of them to destroy their factions. Now Issei found himself outside the Shadow Dome looking at the great ocean while smoking a cigarette. The water reached to splash his face a little thanks to the big waves. But that didn't matter to him. Rather, he relaxed him a little, feeling the water on his face, hearing the sound of the ocean, being able to feel the air run through his body. But then he felt someone approaching where he was. The gray-haired man turned around only to see Triaxa, who was wearing a green jacket with dark pants and military boots, while her beautiful silver hair moved thanks to the wind, making her look very wonderful in the gray-haired man's eyes. Triaxa, they told me that I could find you here, she said very nervously while trying to hide her blush. Issei, what's wrong, Triaxa? He asked seriously, but at the same time somewhat worried about the silver-haired girl's behavior. Triaxa, well, it's that she said very nervously while playing with her fingers and remembering the conversation she had with Mako. Flashback. The silver-haired girl and the brunette with a blue streak could be seen having lunch with Raleigh while they talked about a very important topic for the dragon goddess of the apocalypse, while the blonde paid attention to the conversation, although he did not deny that he wanted to laugh a little about the problem of the dragon goddess, without caring about her title and position. Mako, well, Triexa, what's your problem? Why are you so nervous? He asked seriously while staring at the dragon. Triexa, well no, it's that well, he said, trying to articulate a word. Raleigh, wow, the goddess of the apocalypse stutters. That's very entertaining, he said mockingly, receiving a light blow from Mako. Mako, Raleigh wasn't funny, I complained to her even though she wanted to laugh too. And what did you want to tell me, Triexa? Triexa, well, as you know, Issei had saved me when I was trapped in the seal, she said, receiving a nod from Mako and Raleigh, and also when I tried to help him. Herc, here we go, Triexa, get to the point, he said, sitting at the table next to his son Chuck. Chuck, come on, tell us what you mean. Triexa, well, it's that I murmur. Raleigh, what? Sorry, but I didn't hear you more clearly. Triexa, I am murmur. Herc, Triexa speaks louder and clearer. Triexa, I'm in love with Issei and I speak loudly so they can hear me. Everyone at the table almost choked because of that, since basically the gray-haired boy wasn't one of those who took much into account the subject of couples and love. Rather, he dedicated himself to his work as a soldier and Jaeger. But since the great beast of the apocalypse appeared in their lives, it has made Issei change. He was more open, he talked a lot with her, and even though it was rare, he smiled, something that made everyone happy. Herc, so what? Are you going to tell him? He asked as he began to eat. Triexa, I don't know, what if she rejects me or if there's someone else? Mako, Triexa, since you arrived, Issei has changed a lot. Raleigh, you'd be surprised if I told you that I wasn't very open with people before. Chuck, yeah, he was very cold and quiet, he only focused on completing the missions he was given. Herc, but since you've been here, it's calmer and let's say happier, ha ha ha. Mako, so just follow you, Triexa, I'm sure Issei feels the same way about you. She said while Triexa thought about what to do, since she was always seen as a weapon and a monster that wants to be killed. But since the Grey Danger saved her and gave her a place where she can call home, she began to feel love for him. But it had to be an unrequited love, so without further ado she knew what she had to do. End flashback. Triexa, Issei, well, I wanted to know, if you wouldn't mind if you'd go out with me, she said very nervously, causing the gray-haired boy to look at her curiously. Well, it's been a while since this world exploded and I would like to know, see how much it has changed. Issei, sure, just let me get ready to leave, he said as he passed by her while a smile appeared on both of their faces. Triexa, now alone in that area of the Shatterdome, began to jump for joy as she said, yes, yes, over and over again, not realizing that all of this was being seen by the gray-haired man who had a smile on his face. Issei, she looks like a little girl, ha ha ha, he said, and then entered the Shatterdome and went to his bedroom to change clothes and go out with Triexa. Chapter 9. It was a very quiet night on the streets of Tokyo. Everyone was walking through the night streets of this city. Some were going to their homes to rest after a long day of work, and others were going to some night work meetings, and some couples were going anywhere to hang out. But we will focus more on a special couple, which was the dragon goddesses of the apocalypse, Triexa and the Jaeger of Hope, Issei. The girl walked, or rather ran, while contemplating the entire city, its lights, its decorations, as well as feeling the snow falling on her face, and it was something that made her very happy since she had never had contact with anything other than the ashes and smoke of the fire. Issei just looked at the dragon's behavior, making a slight smile appear on his face, since she looked like a little girl in a candy store, and that was something that he really liked. It made her look very tender and beautiful. Triexa, come on, Issei-kun, I want to see this whole city. I want to see what places you're going to take me to, she said, starting to pull him by the hand. The gray-haired boy had blushed quite a bit when he felt Triexa's hand touch his while she pulled him. She looked like a little girl. It was as if she had never seen the human world. Although it was true, since for millennia she had been locked in that place which changed as the real world changed, with the only difference that it was only destruction and darkness. Issei liked that about her. Maybe when she was with the factions she heard bad things about them, that she was a monster, a beast that caused destruction and death. But in the end she was just another person who only wanted to be understood and have company. Issei understood her quite well. After all, he went through almost the same thing. But at the time of going to save her and get her out of that prison that God made for her before dying, he had not realized that he had given her a great gift, and that was hope. The brown-haired boy had been pulled for several minutes by the dragon goddess until he suddenly stopped. That surprised the gray-haired boy a little until he heard something start to roar. He looked everywhere but nothing until he heard it again, so he turned to Triaxa, who had both hands on her stomach while trembling a little from the shame she felt, thus implying that the origin of that roar was Triaxa's stomach, which was hungry. Issei, you're hungry, aren't you? He asked, receiving a nod from Triaxa. Okay, come follow me, I know a good place to eat, he said while taking her by the hand. The girl blushed a lot when she felt him grab her hand but decided to follow Issei's steps while trying to hide her blush, although it was useless since it was very, very obvious. But returning to the main topic, they were walking for almost 1 hour until they had finally reached a square. They were walking for about 15 minutes while Triaxa contemplated the place until they reached a restaurant on the second floor of it. Triaxa, what a place, she said in amazement. Issei, well Triaxa, let's eat something and then how about we go watch a movie afterwards, he said while they were served something to eat. Triaxa, of course Issei-kun, I would love to very much, she said as she began to eat. Issei just smiled a little and then ate the food that had been served to him, while he talked to Triaxa about normal things. But what he didn't expect was that Triaxa almost devoured all the food in the restaurant, if it weren't for the fact that Issei was a member of the Pacific Forces and earned a lot of cash. He would have suffered a heart attack. After that he began to walk towards the cinema to see a movie. When they arrived they began to look at what was on the billboard to see what movie they were going to see until they decided on the witch's movie. After that they decided to walk for a while to be able to talk about normal things until they arrived at a park where there were many trees although they were covered in snow. Triaxa got on her knees and took a little in her hands to be able to feel it, since she had never in her life had contact with anything other than ashes and dust. Issei, seeing that, just smiled a little and then started to look around only to receive a snowball from Triaxa, which he laughed at. Triaxa, oh, so you want to play like this, right? He said, grabbing a large amount of snow to try to throw it at Triaxa, only for her to react quickly and throw another snowball at him, causing all the snow he grabbed to fall on Issei's head. Now you're going to see, girl, he said, turning to Triaxa to catch her, although she was running laughing while throwing snowballs at her. They were like that for several minutes until they reached a frozen lake where Triaxa almost fell if it weren't for Issei, who hugged her by the waist, blushing her quite a bit. Issei, Triaxa, be more careful, he said while taking her by one hand and the other holding her waist more firmly. Let me help you with this, he said as he started to move. Triaxa, Issei hopes that. Issei, calm down, this is like dancing, he said while trying to get Triaxa to learn. Let me help you. After saying that, they both began to move in sync while looking at each other with a sweet smile, and then, inadvertently, they both fell into the snow while laughing. Triaxa, thank you very much, Issei, she said with a big smile. Issei, but why? Triaxa, for giving me a chance to be happy, she said as she started to cry. Issei only proceeded to wipe the tears from her beautiful eyes as he brought her closer to him, while little by little they got closer until they almost touched their lips and felt each other's breathing. A few seconds passed until they joined their lips in a tender and deep kiss. They both enjoyed the kiss they gave each other while the snow fell on their bodies. They both let out the feelings they felt between them without realizing that they were being watched by several girls who felt great pain in their hearts when they saw how the two of them expressed their love. Chapter 10. It had already been 2 weeks since Issei and Triaxa's date, as well as the beginning of their love. At first the entire supernatural world was started by such information. The great beast of the apocalypse, Triaxa in love with the greatest kaiju hunter Issei aka Coyote Tango, was something that truly shocked them. But how was it that this reached their ears? Easy. There was no shortage of gossip, but while returning to the main topic during the first week, Triaxa was able to see how the people who were in the Shatterdome were kindred to them, from workers to the Jaeger's pilots. At first she thought they were just doing it to get on Coyote Tango's good side, but that thought went away after having a little chat with Marshal Pentecost. Flashback. Triaxa could be seen walking through the halls of the Shatterdome towards the office of the man who started the program that saved the lives of all humans on Earth. She proceeded to knock on the large steel door, receiving a pass. From the other side, she proceeded to enter, seeing Pentecost, who was looking at a window. The reason why he was looking that way, simple, he could see how his men were preparing some things while he gave a smile, then turned to look at Triaxa as he closed that window. Pentecost, thank you for coming, Triaxa, he said, turning to look at her seriously, hiding his smile well. Triaxa, why did you want to see me, Mr. Pentecost? Pentecost, well, Triaxa, as you know, you've been with us for 2 weeks. Triaxa, that's right, sir, he said without understanding what was happening. Pentecost, and you're probably wondering why everyone has become so nice to you? Triaxa, Marshal Pentecost, what's going on? Pentecost, Sai, come with me, Triaxa, he said, walking to the door, followed by the silver-haired girl. Triaxa, what's wrong, Marshal? Pentecost, look, you've always lived in solitude, he said, calling the elevator. The entire supernatural world was afraid of you because of your power and title, forcing you to live in darkness and solitude, he said, entering the elevator with the girl. But when Coyote Tango took you out of that dimension where you were locked up, you didn't come to that monster that those leaders talked so much about. Triaxa, so what did they see in me? Pentecost, a person who only wants to be accepted by others. After saying that, the elevator stopped, opening the door, revealing the Shatterdome field, something that impacted Triaxa greatly. But why? Simple, in front of her were all the people who were in the Shatterdome, as well as the Yokai Queen with some of hers, as well as Odin with some Asgardians, while 2 Jaegers, Gypsy and Striker, held a sign that said, "Welcome to your new home, Triaxa." Triaxa, BB, but how? She said while trying to contain her desire to cry because of the great happiness she felt. Pentecost, thank Coyote Tango, he said while pointing at the aforementioned one who had his armor on. He was the one who came up with the idea. Triaxa, here? Issei, me, ha 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 ha. Triaxa, you are a fool, liar, idiot, she said while hitting her chest before being held by Issei. Issei, but this fool, he loves you like you have no idea, he said, hugging her lovingly while his forehead met hers. Triaxa couldn't stand it anymore and started to cry because of how happy she felt at that moment. She couldn't believe it. Now she could be accepted. She could finally fit into society, just as she had wanted to for several centuries. She had finally found people who weren't afraid of her, and all thanks to her beloved Jaeger Issei Hayato aka Coyote Tango. End flashback. Since then, Triaxa has been very happy in the human world, and she has always wanted to help the engineers with the Jaegers, so she has also tried to help the engineers repair and sometimes improve the Jaegers, just like now when she was repairing Gypsy Denger's armor after a tough fight she had with a Category 3 kaiju. Triaxa was finishing fixing the father's helmet that covered the chest reactor while humming a song until they heard someone yell at him. Issei, well, from the dragon goddess of the apocalypse to the dragon goddess of engineering, he shouted mockingly as he arrived at the hangar where they were doing the repair. Triaxa, haha, very funny, isn't it? She said, a little annoyed by that. Issei, calm down, love, I just wanted to know if you were okay, he said while crossing his arms. Triaxa, well, as you can see, she said, swooping down and then bringing out her dragon wings to soften her fall. I'm fine. I think I'm pretty good at this repair thing, she said while wiping the little grease off her hands with a rag. Issei, well, as I see it is, Gypsy is as good as new. Triaxa, not to brag, but I'm really good at this, ha, she said, puffing out her chest with pride. Issei, but for fights with the kaijus you fall short, he said, removing his airs of grandeur from Triaxa. Triaxa, how bad you are, she said sadly while she had a 9 depression and was on her knees in a corner, and everyone was looking at her with a drop of anime sweat. Mako, that was cruel of you, Issei, he said, arriving at the place with Raleigh. Issei, as they say, it is better to hurt with the truth than to destroy with a lie. Raleigh, I find no flaws in your logic. Triaxa, Sean Malash, he said, pouting and speaking in a cute way, causing Issei to almost fall knocked out by that. Herc, hey, then there will be time to do your soap opera. The Marshal wants us all to go to his office. It seems that he is going to see a meeting with the leaders of the supernatural world, he said, drawing everyone's attention. Just like that, Everyone headed to Marshal Pentecost's office and then headed to the supernatural world to find out what the leaders of the supernatural world wanted now. Chapter 11. Shatterdomes / Hong Kong's 0200 HRS. Various agents and workers could be seen moving around doing their respective jobs, as well as some Jaegers walking around the Shatterdome keeping an eye on the coast in case of possible kaiju activity. But for now we're going to focus on the roof of the Shatterdome where our favorite couple was found lying down looking at the stars while holding hands. Triaxa, wow, is it my imagination or the stars say they are getting more beautiful? Issei, the stars are becoming more and more beautiful. Triaxa, how are you? He said, making the dragon blush. Triaxa, it's not true, Issei, she said, very embarrassed by what her boyfriend told her. Issei, she's very cute, he thought while watching Triaxa cover her face with both hands. I think it's time for me to do it, he thought while sitting down. Triaxa, honey, is something wrong? Issei, it's nothing, Triaxa. I was just thinking about something, he said while putting his hand in his pocket. Triaxa, what were you thinking? She asked while hugging him from behind. Issei, Triaxa, you and I have had some good and fun times, he said, drawing the albino's attention, and the truth is, I am grateful to you for all those beautiful moments we had, for those beautiful smiles you gave me. Triaxa, Issei, what's going on? She asked without understanding what her boyfriend meant. Issei, love, what I want to say is that I love you with all my being and I would like that you and I, he tried to say, but he was so nervous that he couldn't get the words out. What I want is for you to be my. He didn't finish saying when he heard Tendo's voice over the Shatterdome's speakers and loudspeakers. Tendu, Triaxa, Issei, wherever you are, end your nonsense and report to the bridge immediately. Triaxa, well, I think the meeting with the facts is about to begin, she said while giving her boyfriend a kiss on the cheek. Issei, yes, he said, somewhat dejected for not having been able to do what he had planned. Triaxa, calm down, love, we'll have another chance to talk, she said while hugging him. Well, we'd better go now. Issei, go ahead, I'll catch up with you right now, he said as he watched his beloved walk away and then took an engagement ring out of his pocket. Tendo, consider himself a dead man, he said as he put the ring in his pocket and went to the bridge. After reaching the bridge, he could see that Marshal Pentecost, Mako, Raleigh and the Hensons were gathered, but he also noticed the presence of Tendo, who was handing out documents to those who were going to attend the meeting. But when he was handing the documents to Issei, he grabbed him by the wrist and whispered in his ear, causing great fear in Tendu. Issei, when you least expect it, and without anyone finding out, I will give you the worst beating of your life that you will even wish you had died before starting. After whispering that to him, Tendo began to slowly move away from him until they were at a safe distance. Pentecost, well, as you know, today is the meeting with the factions, he said seriously. Raleigh, and where is it going to be? Pentecost, in the underworld in the council room of the capital Lilith, he said, making Issei make an angry face. Mako, but why there? Herc, maybe they think we're going to hand Issei over to them and make it public, he said mockingly. Chuck, and how are we supposed to get to the meeting place? I'll help you with that, said a voice, drawing everyone's attention. Pentecost, Queen Yasaka arrived a little late, he said, looking at the aforementioned. Yasaka, I'm sorry, Marshal Pentecost, but I've had trouble with our deadliest enemy. Pentecost, I understand the paperwork, he said as he prepared for the meeting. The haired boy was about to speak until he felt someone hug her, so he turned his gaze to his senses, seeing Yasaka's only daughter, Kunu, who had a sweet smile as she hugged him, something that took everyone by surprise, but especially her mother. Issei, if I'm not mistaken, you are the daughter of Queen Yasaka, little Kunu, right? Kunu, yes, she said tenderly, thank you very much for saving me and protecting my people. Issei just proceeded to caress her head while everyone watched that scene tenderly, and then Yasaka created a big base of all those who were going to the meeting: Pentecost, the Hensons, Raleigh, Mako, Doctors Gottlieb and Geisor, Triaxa and Issei, and then began to disappear into the magic circle, leaving those on the bridge to work. Underworld/capital of Lilith Council Room, you could see gathered by the supernatural world, the leaders of the Alliance accompanied by their seraphims/mouse/cadres, as well as the Gremory, Citri, Baal, Agar's retinues, and the different advisors of the great biblical factions. On the part of the human world, You could see the different leaders of the world accompanied by some yokais and as guardians like Odin, in that the magic circle with the symbol of the yokai queen appeared in the middle of the great room, letting our protagonist be seen accompanied by his new family. All this was broadcast live in the supernatural and human world. Core Academy. All the students remaining in the academy could be seen, as well as the teachers and the principal, seeing what was happening. But the moment they saw how those from the Jaeger program appeared, they were quite impressed to see Issei with great changes. But the one who was very, very surprised was Jez, who had a smile upon seeing her beloved alive. But that smile went away when she saw how he was holding hands with Triaxa. In the council room, everyone looked at the members of the Jaeger program seriously while they were quite calm and then proceeded to start the meeting that would decide what would happen. But what they did not know is that the kaijus had already predicted that meeting and they were going to take advantage of it to finish once and for all with the only person who is a threat to their plans, and that is Issei, the only Jaeger and the only one who can have the power to stop them once and for all. Chapter 12. The meeting had begun. Everything was being broadcast live throughout the supernatural world as well as the entire human world. At the request of the biblical leaders, Odin and Yasaka decided to sit next to Marshal Pentecost, who was being accompanied by Herc and Chuck, as well as Mako, Raleigh, Triaxa, Issei and Doctors Gottlieb and Geisel, while in front of them was the council of the three biblical factions. Counselor D. 1. Well, let's start right away with this meeting about the unacceptable activities of the Jaegers in the supernatural world, the demons said seriously Marshal Pentecost in charge of the Jaeger program. What do you have to say about what is going to be discussed? Pentecost. I understand that the times, or in this case the time that my men have intervened in the supernatural world, is because of the appearances of some kaijus. Counselor C. 1. Marshal Pentecost is right, and it all started when a Category 4 kaiju tried to invade Asgard. Advisor A. 1. Odin-sama, may I show you proof of the appearance of the first kaiju in your domain? After saying that, Odin proceeded to create a magic circle where he began to show the great golden kingdom of Asgard. But out of nowhere they saw how the great golden wall that surrounded the great kingdom broke, while several pieces of rubble flew out and fell into the city just as the next kaiju was seen. Everyone was really shocked except Odin and those from the Jaeger program, since they never thought that the kaijus could also attack the supernatural world, and more so when they saw how he destroyed as if it were nothing the great golden wall of Asgard, which protected the Asgardian city for several centuries, seeming as if it were just air for him. Odin, the moment the kaiju broke through the wall, my Valkyries, soldiers and my son fought with great bravery against that thing. Counselor D. 2. And you didn't receive help from these supposed Jaegers? He asked arrogantly, looking at the marshal, who smiled back, causing him to be confused. Odin, you're wrong, brat. The marshal gave us his help by sending Stryker piloted by the Hensons, and this is what happened. After saying that, he showed how the kaiju was already in the city of Asgard, but they also saw Stryker, who grabbed him by the neck, hitting him in the face, and then hitting him again without giving him a chance to respond. Everyone watched as Stryker fought, or rather humiliated, the kaiju who had no chance to respond. He hit him so hard that he then grabbed him by both shoulders and slammed him against a building, and then hit him again with more force, pushing him away from him, and then firing 6 missiles from his chest, killing him. Odin, that's what happened, he said seriously as he stopped showing the recording. Pentecost, and as you saw, that was the first and only time my men intervened in your world. So don't come telling me things that aren't true. Counselor A. 2. I'm sorry, Marshal, here in the report it said. Counselor D. 3. As I see it, your soldiers too, more specifically Issei Hayadu aka Coyote Tango, intervened when he saved the Beast 666 Triaxa from being killed by a Category 1 kaiju in the dark dimension where it was supposed to be locked up for the rest of his life, he said in an arrogant and cold manner, while showing a recording of how Issei fought with the Category 1 kaiju, how it showed that he could transform from Jaeger to human, and how he got Triaxa out of that dimension. So by law, we order you to return Triaxa, hand over Coyote Tango to us, and give us control of the Jaeger program, he said arrogantly, making everyone look badly at the Demon Council. Pentecost, to tell the truth, I already knew they were going to demand something like that. Counselor D. 4. So that saves us. Pentecost. But I won't do it, he said, impressing all the supernatural beings by how he refused the proposal of the demonic council. It's my men who fall every time a Jaeger falls, so I'm not going to hand over Triaxa to you. I'm not going to hand over my best soldier to you, and I'm not going to give you control of the Jaeger program. Counselor A. 2. We understand that, Marshal Pentecost, and what we really want is that. Counselor D. 5. Damned human, tell me who you think you are to refuse what we order you to do. Pentecost. I believe myself to be a simple man who has shown that he has his pants on better than all of you put together, he said seriously without any sign of regret for his words. Demonic advisors, damn human, we are going to. They did not finish as they felt a great tremor that grew stronger and stronger until they heard a great roar that terrified all the supernatural beings. It was a kaiju. Everyone immediately went out and saw the city of Lilith on fire, while in the middle of they were the kaiju who turned to look at them and then headed towards them at great speed. Raleigh, a Category 1 kaiju, he said seriously. Issei, okay, time to warm up a little, he said before being stopped by Pentecost. What? Pentecost, how about we let a veteran team take care of him? Everyone didn't understand what he meant by that, but then they saw a building fall and saw a metal fist hit the kaiju, who tried to recover from that blow until he received another one, making him retreat. Everyone thought it was a Jaeger, but they didn't know which one it was until the smoke vanished, revealing the same Jaeger Model 1 Romeo Blue. Issei, well, so Romeo Blue, he said before seeing the marshals, so you were already getting an idea of what would happen, right? Pentecost, that's right, and the truth is that they were already itching to go out and fight a kaiju, he said while watching Romeo Blue fight the kaiju. The live recording was still going on and everyone was watching as Romeo Blue hit the kaiju with great force, trying to contain it while it tried to get rid of him, and everyone in the human and supernatural world was really impressed by the bravery of the Romeo Blue pilots. Romeo Blue made the kaiju retreat while he tried everything he could to get rid of Romeo. But what no one knew was that this was just a distraction so that the kaiju's true plan could be set in motion so that they could eliminate Issei Hayato once and for all, who was the true threat to them. Chapter 13. Underworld/capital of Lilith. The entire city was reduced to rubble and flames. Many demons could be seen trying to flee the city, while in the middle of all that great destruction 2 large figures could be seen fighting each other. The first was a giant monster, more specifically a Category 1 kaiju, and the other was a Jaeger Model 1, more specifically Romeo Blue. Both were engaged in a great battle which seemed to have no end. But despite being in the middle of a fight, Romeo Blue tried to protect the citizens of the capital of Lilith. Issei, it seems he needs help, he said, watching as Romeo pushed the kaiju and then moved some rubble, releasing a group of kaijus. Triaxa, we have to help him. Pentecost, okay, we have to get all the demons out of the con area. He couldn't finish because an Asgardian interrupted him. Asgardian, Odin-sama, I have bad news. Asgard has fallen, he said, shocking everyone. Odin, but how did it happen? Asgardian, it seems that the attack of that kaiju was just a distraction for another kaiju to attack Asgard and enter the ghostly sea. Odin, it's impossible, they can't know of their existence. Searches, Odin-sama, what are you talking about? Odin, from the axe of the ghost of Ragnarok. Whoever manages to wield that axe will become invincible, he said, shocking everyone, but it is impossible for them to know about that axe, or at least know what it is for. Newton, so my research was true, he said, drawing everyone's attention. Pentecost, what are you talking about, Dr. Newton? Newton, well, I was collecting and researching different remains from different kaijus and discovered that they have the same DNA. Michael, and what does that have to do with it? Newton, what are clones? He said as a loud bang was heard as the kaiju was seen falling on a building while Romeo Blue remained standing. Seraphal, they're clones, okay, but what does that have to do with? Azazel, what if they are clones, he said, drawing everyone's attention, then there must be someone who clones them, right? Newton, that's right, that means they don't have their hunting and gathering instincts, they attack us under orders. Geisler, but that is impossible. Newton, then how do they know about the axe and where to find it? He asked, silencing his partner. If we allow them to obtain that weapon, their masters will surely use that power to create more powerful kaijus, and we will have no chance to defend ourselves. Pentecost, Coyote Tango. Issei, yes, sir. Pentecost, you have to go to Asgard, find the axe and prevent it from falling into the wrong hands. Issei, understood, sir. Triexa, I'll go with you, Issei. Pentecost, Triexa, we need you here to evacuate the civilians. Triexa, but. Issei, I'll be fine, love, don't worry, he said while kissing Triexa on the lips, making the Citrus and Gremrys jealous. Hitomi, but my brother can't go alone. I swear, it's true, he may have problems and. Raleigh, hey, he's not as weak as you guys. Mako, it's true, if we talk about strength, both physical and will, Issei is the strongest of us all. Herc, Issei, you better go now, he said seriously. Issei, understood, Rossways. Do you think you can take me to Asgard? I asked, receiving a nod from Issei. Pentecost, remember Issei, choose the axe before the enemy, he said, receiving a nod from Issei, who disappeared in a magic circle made by Rossways. Raleigh, okay, now we have to take care of evacuating people. Pentecost, this is Raleigh. Hitomi, but what about Issei? Aren't you worried? Chuck, that's right, but unlike you, we can trust him. With Issei, he and Rossways had finally arrived in Asgard, or else what was left of Asgard. The great golden city was reduced to rubble, and very few warriors and valkyries could be seen trying to help the villagers of Asgard who were buried in the rubble, while large footprints of a kaiju that seemed to be very huge could be seen heading towards the sea. Issei, per people, he said, watching how the warriors and valkyries tried to help their own. Rossways, that bastard, I swear I'll finish that monster. Issei, so in that direction is the ghostly sea, he said as he began to sharpen his gaze more, seeing the kaiju's trail. Rossways, that's right, according to legend the ghostly sea is very deceptive. It will try to turn your worst fears against you, and if you manage to cross the ghostly sea you will find death at the clutches of the fearsome lost Fel, the guardian of the axe. Issei, but I guess for a kaiju that would just be a child's play. Rossways, there is something else, Issei, he said, drawing the brown-haired boy's attention. The axe is capable of choosing its owner, but he has to prove to be worthy of its power. Issei, I understand, but I still won't allow a disgusting kaiju to try to take over something like that, he said as he approached the seashore. Rossways, stay here with your people, they need you more than me. Rossways, but Issei, what about you? If you reach the ghost sea for sure? Issei, calm down, I'll be fine. In fact, I'm going to tell you a saying that we say in the Shatter Dome, and I hope you remember it well, he said, having all of Rossways' attention. 6 minutes later, all the survivors of Asgard could be seen on the coast watching in the distance as Issei in his Jaeger form was moving away from Asgard towards the ghostly seas in search of the Ragnarok Phantom's axe. But among all of them Rossways seemed to be very worried, but then she remembered something that Issei told her. There are things you can't defeat, Rossways. Like the forces of nature, if you see a hurricane coming you have to run, but when you're in a Jaeger, or in my case you're a Jaeger, you can magically face the hurricane and win. The silver-haired girl, remembering those words, only smiled, since with that said she knew that Issei was never going to give up and was going to complete his mission one way or another. After all, what Mako had said was true. If it was about willpower, Issei was the strongest of all. And there would be nothing in the universe capable of destroying that great willpower that the great and powerful Jaeger Model 1 Coyote Tango has, the strongest of all the Jaegers. Chapter 14. It was a rather desolate and silent place in the Phantom Sea, which was covered by a large, thick fog that covered as far as the eye could see. It seemed like a place full of water and fog, nothing more. But beyond that fog and that there was something else, something for which the kaiju had dared to try to invade those domains. Beyond all that fog there was a large, mysterious island also covered by fog, but not as much as the sea, but it was covered by some fog. Deep within that island was the weapon that the kaiju so longed to have in their claws. The great axe of the ghost of Ragnarok lay quietly on an altar where a worthy warrior worthy of its power awaited. But this axe was not the only one in that place. There was also a beautiful white-haired woman with golden eyes who was none other than the protector of that axe. She, like the axe, was waiting for a worthy warrior who would be able to carry the great axe, and thus be able to finally rest in peace. She was meditating, feeling the energies that the axe gave off, As always calm and without any alteration until from one moment to the next the axe began to pulse, causing the woman to open her eyes as she felt how the axe began to awaken and also release some of its power. "It seems that he has finally arrived," said the woman as she stood up and approached the axe. "A worthy bearer has finally arrived for you," she said as the axe began to shine white. "I'd better wait for him," she said, and then headed for the coast. In the ghostly sea, everything was quite calm and silent, as if there was no existence of life whatsoever. But then a large figure hidden in the water passed by, breaking the silence. That thing was swimming very quickly, trying to reach its destination if it weren't for the fact that a missile hit his back, stopping him and drawing his attention. That's where he saw it was Issei, or rather Coyote Tango, who was in a fighting pose waiting for the creature to reveal itself. "Issei, what are you waiting for, kaiju? Show yourself, or do you want me to take your ugly face out myself?" he said, being heard throughout the place. The kaiju in response to that began to approach him while slowly getting up, revealing that he was a little bigger than Issei as well as being quite dangerous. That was when he saw him, the kaiju who was in charge of killing several Jaeger's pilots, the first kaiju that had appeared, the intruder, the largest and most dangerous Category 1 kaiju. "Issei, we finally see each other, damn it," he said as he prepared to fight. The kaiju only gave a great roar and proceeded to throw a great swipe, which Issei dodged by stepping back but then grabbed his arm and pulled it, causing him to fall. The kaiju got angry at that, and was ready to dismember Issei, who proceeded to connect a strong blow to the kaiju's face, which stepped back after receiving that blow. But the great Coyote Tango proceeded to hit the kaiju and then raised and brought his fists together in the shape of an axe to proceed to bring them down with great force, hitting the kaiju's head. "Issei, what's wrong? Aren't you very tough?" At that the kaiju launches itself bite against Issei, trying to him, but Issei managed to put his arm, making that part shit, and then give him a strong uppercut, lifting him up and then letting him fall into the water, while Issei stepped back a little while preparing his cannons to finish him off once and for all. The intruder tried to launch himself against him and finish him off once and for all, but Issei was faster and fired his cannons, blowing off part of the kaiju's chest. "Issei, I was finally able to avenge my companions," he said, and then began to see blurry as well as seeing hallucinations. "But what the hell is this?" He didn't finish saying it as the kaiju came out of the water, giving him a strong blow to the face, stunning him. Issei held his face tightly to make him back off, but that trying to blow had made him lower his guard, and he began to see a large city in flames as well as many corpses as well as destroyed Jaegers. He didn't understand what was happening, but with some effort he returned to reality, pushing the kaiju. "Issei, okay, it's time to end this," he said, preparing some projectiles from his knuckles. But then the kaiju drove his axe-shaped head into Issei's arm, causing him to scream loudly and seeing the hallucinations again. There were a large number of kaijus all over the city, but that wasn't all. There were also some sort of purple vines around several buildings. He didn't understand what was happening, but then he saw the lifeless body of someone he cared about a lot. In reality, the intruder moved his axe-shaped head to the side, tearing off his arm and then proceeding to push Issei until he collided with what appeared to be a large rock and proceeded to drive his head into Coyote Tango's chest, who felt great pain as he felt his chest being pierced. In the illusion, Issei was feeling a great and terrible pain as blue rays appeared on his body, but the pain he could feel the most was seeing who was in front of him, the lifeless body of the person he loves the most. There was Triaxa with several wounds as well as being wrapped in several purple vines along with her friends, companions and family. "Issei, ugh, if this is the future, ugh, I can still change it," he said as the illusion began to disappear. "I can still change it," he shouted, returning to reality. After returning to reality, he proceeded to charge another load with his knuckles while trying to endure the pain. He felt how the intruder tore off every part of his body, how the pain took over him, almost to the verge of fainting, but he felt how the energy accumulated in his knuckles reached its maximum. "Issei, die," he shouted and then fired the energy, creating a huge explosion. On the island, the woman who was in charge of the axe was on the coast waiting for the chosen one of that great legendary weapon to appear, but there was no sign until she saw the explosion not far away. She did not understand what had happened there, so she decided to wait a little longer to find out what was happening. She waited around 2 hours and nothing, no signs, so she decided to return to the sanctuary, thinking that the person who had come to look for the axe had died like the others. but then she heard something. It was like footsteps that became louder and louder, and so she turned around seeing something she never thought she would see. But what the hell is that? I asked, looking at the object. It was Coyote Tango, who was quite damaged. He was missing an arm, part of his face had been damaged, he had a hole in his chest and several wounds around his body. The great Jaeger, upon reaching the coast, let himself fall, creating a great rumble as well as raising a lot of sand and then being surrounded by a blue light. But what is that? I asked, watching as Coyote Tango began to fade away, leaving a large curtain of smoke. The woman did not realize what had happened until she saw Issei coming out of the smoke, who was in deplorable condition. The woman approached him to try to help him, but Issei, when he took his first 3 steps on the island's beach, fell to the ground unconscious while the woman approached him quickly, trying to wake him up to prevent him from leaving the world of the living. Without a doubt, that day the great war hero, the hope of humans, the unique Jaeger, the great and invincible Coyote Tango had fallen. Chapter 15. Several months passed since the fall of the great and powerful Coyote Tango, the strongest Jaeger of all and also the light of hope for humanity, and since then things changed drastically and for the worse. The kaijus increased their attacks, leaving humanity and their Jaegers on the ropes. In addition to the Demon Council trying to infiltrate several Jaeger stations' shatterdomes every day in order to steal all the information and data to create their own Jaegers, but always receiving a good beating from the Jaeger pilots that still remained. As for Triaxa, well, she had become a rather cold and cruel person against her enemies, but when no one was looking, she would break down in tears, always wondering where her beloved was or always blaming herself for not having insisted more so she could accompany her beloved. Her companions and friends always tried to support her, but it was as if Issei was a great fundamental part in the life of the great dragon, which was true since he was the first to trust her in addition to giving her what she longed for with all her being, to be accepted by others. On Ghost Island, everything was quite calm and silent, as if in that place there was only nothingness. But inside the jungle you could see a very well-kept and beautiful cabin, while next to it was a beautiful crystalline lake where you could see the guardian of the axe of the ghost of Ragnarok drink some water in a bucket and then enter her cabin. Seeing Issei lying in his bed in a pitiful state since he was missing an arm, his face was worn out and he had a large scar and he had large wounds all over his torso. "I'm surprised you managed to get to this place with those wounds," she said while soaking a rag to clean the gray-haired man's wounds, if he hadn't woken up suddenly and held the girl's arm tightly. "Issei, who are you? Where am I?" he asked, trying to harden the pain of his wounds. "Calm down, there's nothing to fear. I am the protector of the axe of the ghost of Ragnarok. My name is Karina," she said, introducing herself. "Now allow me to continue cleaning your wounds," she said while passing the cloth over the wounds of the hero, who gave a few moans of pain. "Issei, so I finally made it?" "Karina, that's right, and I'm actually quite surprised that you managed to do it despite your injuries." "Issei, and how long has it been since I've been here?" "Karina, approximately 5 months," she said, impacting Issei greatly because of that things changed drastically since you arrived. "Issei, I need to go," he said, trying to get up. "Karina, no, what you need is to rest," she said, trying to make him lie down. "Issei, I can't stay here anymore, they need me and—" "Karina, and you can't do anything in the condition you're in now," she said, putting more force into trying to get him to lay down on the bed, but she didn't count on the force being so strong that it even made her fall on top of him. Both of them stared into each other's eyes while a slight red tint was marked on Karina's cheeks, while Issei got lost in the beautiful eyes of that beautiful woman, and a feeling was present in which it was only present every time he was near Triaxa, even if it was not as strong as the dragon goddess of the apocalypse. Karina proceeded to get up a little nervously while playing with her hair and then taking the bucket of water. "Karina, you need to replenish your strength so you can be accepted by the axe of Ragnarok," she said to leave the cabin, leaving Issei confused by what she said. At the time of leaving, Karina could only read on the wall and then begin to sit on the floor while holding her chest, more specifically in the area where her heart was, as it accelerated while she still had the red tint on her cheeks but a little calmer, in addition to giving a small sigh and looking at the sky. "Karina, but what was that I felt just now? In fact, I'm still feeling it," she said as she peeked through the entrance of the cabin, seeing Issei lying in bed sleeping peacefully. "First of all, what is this that I'm feeling? Why am I feeling this way now? Why does he make me feel this way if I don't even know him? After saying that, she proceeded to get up from the ground to walk towards the jungle in order to find what she was going to need to make the meal, but still having that strange feeling for her. A few weeks passed where Karina was taking care of Issei in addition to taking the time to get to know him very thoroughly, from knowing his story to even knowing about his favorite color, thus discovering the feelings she had never experienced before, discovering that it is called love. Now she was returning from the jungle with some fruits and leaves, but when she arrived at the cabin she saw Issei standing at the entrance of the cabin. "Karina, as I see, you feel better now, right?" she said while looking at Issei, who looked serious. "Well, I'm going to prepare the food, and maybe if you want you can." Issei, "Karina, you know I can't stay," he said, stopping the woman's plans. "I need to return home and—" "Karina, but I don't want to," she said in a whisper and sounded quite sad. Issei, "Karina. Karina, I don't want you to leave me alone," she said, shedding several tears. "I don't want you to go." Issei, seeing Karina like this, could only approach her and hug her, trying to calm her down, but he knew very well that he had to return to his world to protect his friends, his companions, and his beloved Triaxa. But he did not have the strength to leave Karina alone. After all, she took care of him and healed his wounds, and it would not be fair to abandon her after what she did for him, in addition to the fact that the feeling he felt for her had also grown and strengthened him. Point of being almost the same as the one he felt for his beloved dragon goddess. In other words, Issei has fallen in love with Karina. Chapter 16. Issei and Karina were walking through the island's forest. After calming her down, the gray-haired man asked her to guide him to the axe of the Phantasma of Ragnarok. At first she wanted to refuse, but in the end she ended up agreeing, since she knew that she couldn't stop him. After all, he had several people waiting for him. So without further ado, she began to guide him through the forest until they reached an ancient stone path with several Nordic statues and runes carved into the ground, which shone brightly, which led to a cave which shone a sky blue with hints of dark blue. "Karina, in that place is what you are looking for," she said as she watched the half-Jaeger walk to the cave, only to be stopped by her. "Only there is something you need to know." Issei, "What?" "Karina, in that cave there is not only the axe." Issei, "What are you trying to tell me?" "Karina, the spirit of the former axe wielder is also there protecting it, so be very careful." Issei, upon hearing those words, knew that it was not going to be easy at all to get that weapon, especially in its current state, but he still mustered his courage by summoning his armory, or rather, what was left of it, since it was only his right arm, half of his chest plate, most of his helmet, some parts of his left leg, and only one of his back cannons in operation. Without further ado, Issei proceeded to enter the cave while Karina watched as the great coyote Tango disappeared into the darkness of that cave. "Karina, please be careful with him." In the cave, Issei walked through the darkness while trying to light the way with the few flashlights he had, seeing absolutely nothing out of the ordinary in a cave, but then he saw a large flash appear out of nowhere. So he began to follow it until he saw how the ground began to change from a floor of dirt and grass to one of carved stone like the walls. But out of nowhere he heard a strange noise behind him, turning to see what it was but seeing nothing. So without further ado he returned on his way without realizing that from the shadows there was a large figure staring at him. As Issei turned a corner he saw something he never thought he would see: some old ruins. Issei began to enter between the ruins, seeing how some kind of story was told between the walls, but on one of the walls he saw what appeared to be the image of what appeared to be a Jaeger carrying a huge axe, but next to it there was an image that was being hidden by an old blanket. So he removed it, seeing that it was a huge, fearsome beast with blue touches and strange symbols implying that it was a fearsome kaiju. He did not understand what he saw, if that was the past or the present. But then a blue glow appeared behind Issei, drawing his attention. He turned around, seeing that it was the axe, which was surrounded by blue fire that expelled small rays. "Issei, so that's the phantom ghost of Ragnarok's axe," he said, approaching the axe. But before he could even touch her, a blow sent him crashing into a wall which collapsed on top of him. Issei began to remove the rubble on top of it. When he finally managed to free himself, he received another blow, only with more force, sending him crashing into a pillar, in addition to breaking his helmet completely, revealing his face, which had some blood dripping down his forehead. So he turned to look at his attacker, seeing that it was a large rock creature. "Issei, This has to be a joke, he said as he got up from the ground. Monster, you are not worthy, he said, hitting him in the chest, sending him flying again. Issei, hit harder than I thought, he said while trying to catch his breath and feeling his things break from that blow. Monster, you are not worthy, he said again, trying to crush him with his fist. But the gray-haired man managed to dodge that blow by getting up quickly and hitting him in the face with all his might, hurting him even more but managing to destroy a small part of the stone monster's face. But he barely managed to do so, starting to quickly hit the monster's body while dodging the stone being's erratic attacks until the creature managed to hit him in the face, sending him flying far away. Issei, okay, this will definitely be harder than fighting a kaiju, he said, getting up from the ground. Monster, you are not worthy, he said, taking him by the neck and lifting him up to then slam him against the ground, still holding him. Issei, really? You only know how to say that? He said, shooting a cable from his arm to the ceiling to wash his feet in the abdomen of the beast. Spin in the air, shoots a cable to the ground and pulls hard, causing it to fall to the ground, even having the beast on its feet, crossing the pole and falling into another chamber. Issei was going to proceed to hit the beast, but it gave him a strong blow that sent him crashing into a wall, going through it. Issei quickly got up and ran against that beast, climbing on its back and starting to hit its head, only to be grabbed by the face by the beast and then taking it off, throwing it up so that it would hit the ceiling to kick it in the side of his body, throwing it to the ground and then putting it on his shoulder. Jumping and plummeting to the ground, starting to go through it, falling from chamber to chamber, going through each floor, which was a total of 4 until reaching the last one, where the beast put its foot on its chest, creating a small mini crater, and Issei spat out a large amount of blood as well as feeling his bones being crushed. Monster, you are not worthy, he said, grabbing him by the face and throwing him away. Issei alone began to get up with great difficulty since all his bones were shattered as well as his armor, blood dripping down different parts of his body. But the strangest thing was that he had to laugh. The creature just ignored that and began to walk towards him. Issei only proceeded to show him the third finger, and not only as rudeness, but he also showed what appeared to be grenade locks, causing the beast to look at his chest, noticing a hole in which there were 3 grenades which exploded, causing Issei to cover himself so as not to be affected by the explosion. He looked out, seeing that the creature was left with only stones scattered on the floor, causing him to sigh heavily and then start walking to find a way to climb up the steps to be able to reach the axe, without realizing that the stones began to gather again. Only this time more stones also began to gather, making the creature grow larger and more terrifying. Chapter 17. Human world. Everything has been chaos since the disappearance of the great Jaeger, the only Model 1 Coyote Tango. When people found out about this, they felt a great void appear in the world. They saw how that glimmer of hope that he had provided had vanished. The pilots and marshals of the Shatterdomes continued their search day after day, night after night. Raleigh, Mako, Penteco's, Herc and Chuck tried to help Triaxa, who had become cold and cruel when she came to her enemies, but when no one saw her, she broke down in tears, begging, pleading for the return of her loved one. The worst thing is that the kaijus had increased their attacks, managing to destroy several Jaegers, leaving humanity in check. Without a doubt, they took great advantage of the disappearance of Coyote Tango. Several Jaegers and Shatterdomes had been destroyed, leaving the defense of humanity in 2 Jaegers. Gypsy, Danger, Striker. In addition to that, they also had the help of Triaxa as well as the other 2 dragon gods, Great Red and Ophis, as well as the factions. Now right at this moment they were preparing for a battle since multiple kaiju movements had been detected north of Japan, 5 to be more exact, 3 of Category 3 and 2 of Category 4. The largest and heaviest they have ever detected. Penteco's, very well, report, he asked as he entered the fountain. Tendu, well, we think the kaijus will reach the northern coast of Japan in about an hour. Penteco's, the teams? German, Gypsy and Striker are ready for action, sir, he said as they watched the aforementioned Jaegers being hooked by several helicopters. Penteco's, and Triaxa? Newt, she's already outside the base waiting for the flight order, he said, seeing the aforementioned give big grunts. Penteco's, any idea where our allies are? Tendo, they say they're already on their way. Penteco's, good sight, pray to any god to free us from this, he said while watching his teams take position on the coast waiting for the arrival of their opponents. We need you, Issei, you are really missed. Back to the ruins, Issei was climbing each step that came his way, and each one he managed to climb was practically torture for him since he couldn't walk properly. He made a great effort to climb, but when he had finally managed to reach the area where the axe was, he gave a slight smile to start walking. It seemed like he was going to get it. Finally, after a long time, he was going to complete his mission until out of nowhere he began to shake and then the ground broke, releasing a large stone creature much more terrifying and larger than the previous one. Issei, this has to be a joke, he said, already annoyed by what was happening. At that, the monster quickly grabs him to proceed to whip him several times on the ground and then throw him to the side like garbage and start running to where he fell while giving great roars full of anger, attacking him without giving him a chance to get up, passing his whole body on the ground, leaving a large trail in his wake to then grab him by the foot and whip him several times to then take his hands with his other arm and proceed to crash his head into the back of the gray-haired man, starting to try to split him in two. Monster, you are not worthy, he said, to throw him into a wall, causing it to collapse on top of Issei. You will never be worthy of carrying such power. After saying that, he ran towards Issei, giving him a huge blow to the face, sending him flying again, and then grabbing him by the leg, starting to spin on his axis, crashing him into every pillar in the place, and then slamming him to the ground again, and giving him a powerful kick in his things, lifting him into the air, and then grabbing his face and crashing it into the ground, starting to walk it all over the ground and then stopping and starting to hit him multiple times with great force. Monster, you will never be worthy of obtaining the power of the Phantom of Ragnarok, he said, watching as Issei tried to get up. Beings like you do not deserve his power, he said, ready to deliver the coup de grace. Issei, enough, he said, stopping the blow and then headbutting him in the jaw. I'm tired of always being told that stupidity, that I'm not worthy. You don't know me and you don't know what I can be capable of, so don't come to me with that stupidity, he said, landing several blows on the monster's body. And if you say that, I'm not saying without knowing who or what I really am, then rot, he said, giving another blow. The monster stopped the blow as if it were nothing, causing Issei to fall to the ground because he was so tired. He just closed his eyes waiting for his end. But seconds passed, and he decided to open his eyes, seeing how the monster looked at Issei with great seriousness, and then released him, stepping aside to reveal the axe. Monster, you have managed to complete the challenge. You have shown great courage. Now it is up to the axe whether to choose you as its bearer or die, he said, letting Issei pass. Issei just walked slowly to the axe in order to take it. He remembered the words of the rock beast, wondering, was he worthy of carrying such power like this? Did he deserve to carry this power? But then he remembered the people he wanted to protect, so without further ado he took the handle of the axe, making it shine with great intensity while he gave a great grunt of pain, and was enveloped in a blue light that illuminated the entire place, and then the temple began to collapse. Outside, Karina was quite worried about what could happen, since she spent a long time without hearing from Issei until she felt everything shaking just as the temple began to collapse while a large imposing figure began to emerge from within, implying that Issei had finally achieved his goal and was more than ready to return home and save his companions and loved ones. Chapter 18. The coast of Japan was in chaos, several soldiers from both the normal and supernatural world lying on the ground with no sign of life, the leaders barely standing watching as Ophis and Great Red were beaten like punching bags by two of the Category 3 kaijus, while Triaxa, Gypsy, and Striker tried to confront the other three. But the strangest thing is that these kaijus were not like the previous ones they had faced. They were stronger and smarter, as well as fighting together. As soon as one was in trouble, the other would interfere by changing dance partners, making the fight more difficult. Herc, damn it, how is it possible that these beasts are smarter than before? He shouted/asked as they managed to land a blow on the kaiju's jaw. Chuck, it doesn't matter. We just have to find an opening in their defenses, he said, blocking as they blocked a cement blow from the monster. Raleigh, Striker at 3, watch out, he shouted, causing Striker to turn around and be rammed by one of the kaijus that were beating up the dragon gods. Gypsy was going to try to help Striker, but in that he is grabbed by the shoulder by the other Category 3 kaiju, turning him over only to receive a strong uppercut from Gypsy, while the Category 4 kaiju he is fighting approached from behind, holding his arm to tear it off, but Gypsy managed to react and fire his plasma cannon to make him retreat. Triaxa could barely keep the kaiju that touched her at bay, but then she sees how Gypsy and Striker were having problems with the kaijus, so she tried to go to her aid, but she was grabbed by the tail by her opponent to start spinning her around and sending her crashing near where the leaders were. She tried to get up but was grabbed by the neck, starting to slam her face against the ground, and then lifted her up and threw her against a mountain. Searches, if this continues, I highly doubt we'll last another round, he said, seeing how Gypsy had been attacked by the kaijus and Striker was still trying to get back up. Azazel, not even with the strength of the three gods together could we confront these beasts, he said, seeing Great Red and Ophis lying on the ground and Triaxa being beaten by the kaiju. Michael, we could use a miracle right now, he said, watching how the kaijus were about to deliver the finishing blows. But then the ground began to shake with great force as the earth began to break and the sea trembled with great force, in addition to several lightning bolts beginning to hit the ground with great force, creating small craters and forcing the earth to separate more and more, releasing large flames of fire. Odin, well, I think you just invoked a miracle, Brat Michael, he said, watching as a crack passed between the kaijus and the two Jaegers and Triaxa. The kaijus had to move away because of the great flame that was shot out, while little by little a large figure began to rise from the depths of the rock, being covered by the lava, which fell slowly and threateningly, making the kaijus feel great pressure and bloodlust in the air until they saw how metallic parts could be seen, revealing the next form of the entity that came out of the depths of the lava in order to stop the 5 kaijus who were trying to do their thing. Searches, but what is that? He asked, seeing the big robot. Yasaka, is it a Jaeger? Odin, I don't know, all I know is that that thing is carrying the ghost of Ragnarok's axe, he said, looking at the weapon. Azazel, hey, could it be that the child they sent for that axe isn't, he said while pointing at the big robot. Hitomi, is that thing my brother? Hero, but if he was, he didn't finish saying when he saw how the Phantom of Ragnarok was on guard. The kaijus gave loud and great roars to try to intimidate the great robot, which in response ran towards them, causing the kaijus to do the same, and when it was a few centimeters from the Jaeger, it stretched its arms, hitting the 5 kaijus with the handle of its axe, sending them flying several meters, and then began to spin the axe, accumulating great energy at the edge of the axe and hitting the ground, creating a large energy wave that hit the kaijus, lifting them into the air and causing them to fall hard to the ground. Odin, okay. Without a doubt the brat achieved his goal by obtaining the axe, he said, watching as ghosts of Ragnarok hit the ground several times with the base of the weapon, challenging the kaijus to get up. One of the Category 4 kaijus rose from the ground with intentions of finishing off the Jaeger by throwing itself at him, but being held by the neck by the Phantom, causing the beast to desperately try to free itself from the grip of the great robot, but only managed to get the latter to drive his axe into the ground and then hit his head, crashing it into the ground and creating a great blue flash that blinded everyone for a few seconds, and then regained sight, seeing how the kaiju's head had exploded from such force and energy that had been applied to it. Rias, okay, that was disgusting, she said, seeing the kaijus remain scattered on the ground. The other kaijus rose from the ground quite furious and began to roar loudly, causing the ghost of Ragnarok to be on guard as the kaijus surrounded him like a pack of predators would do with their future prey. So all the kaijus threw themselves against the ghost, who swung his axe, decapitating everyone while leaving a moment of celestial energy, dropping the decapitated and lifeless bodies of the kaijus around him, and then raising his axe in victory while being watched in surprise by the leaders, the dragon gods and the pilots of the 2 Jaegers. Chapter 19. Everyone watched as the strange Jaeger stood in the middle of the lifeless bodies of the kaijus he had just annihilated until he decided to lower his axe and began to walk in the direction where they were, causing Gypsy, Striker, Great Red and Ophis to stand on guard, while Triaxa looked doubtfully at the great Jaeger who was in front of her while he continued to advance until he stopped in front of her, staring her straight in the eyes while they did the same. Chuck, what an awkward environment for a situation like this, he said while feeling the discomfort. Hansen, you're right. Mako, but will it be true that Jaeger will be Issei? Raleigh, we can only wait and see if what the one-eyed perverted old man says is true, he said, causing Odin to bring him a dinner while Azazel laughed. But in that they see how a purple light covered Triaxa while a sky blue light with white touches surrounded the mysterious Jaeger until both colossal figures began to decrease in size to the size of normal people. Ceasing to be present those intense brightness allowing to see Triaxa in his human form which he saw with great disbelief and happiness. Everyone was almost the same as Triaxa since in front of them was Issei who had a few changes since his hair had changed color showing that now it was bright silver, his eyes now sky blue. His muscles had grown considerably. Triaxa, Issei? Issei, I'm finally home, he said as he lowered his axe. Triaxa, without wasting time, pounced on the now white-haired man to hug him while several tears escaped from her beautiful eyes. All seen by the supernatural beings and the Jaeger's pilots who had a big smile when they saw that Triaxa had returned to being the same as before and all thanks to the one who had given her hope against this great calamity that they now face. Shatterdome. All the people of the Shatterdome were gathered cheering the name of their savior who had returned after a long time. Without a doubt their chances had improved greatly with the return of Issei, and now he carried one of the most powerful weapons in the supernatural world. The axe of the Phantom of Ragnarok. The axe that will end Ragnarok itself. Now everyone had fallen silently after a scream that they all recognized. Issei, someone he knew very well, shouted his name. That's when he saw him, the one he considers a father, the one who gave him a home and a family. He seemed to be quite serious. It didn't take a genius to know that he was upset, the way he walked. His serious face and that cold air he released said it all, so without further ado he stood straight in front of him, while Penteco's stood in front of him, leaving the difference in size visible, proving that Penteco's was even a little bigger. Penteco's, in all my years of life, I have never felt so joyed to see someone, he said quite seriously, and then smiled and hugged Issei tightly. I'm proud of you, boy, he said quite happily, disconcerting everyone with that sudden change. But as cruel as it may be, there is no time to celebrate. We lost too many Jaeger's teams. There is no time to cry. Restart the clock. After saying that, the clock hanging over the base began to reset to 0 while several repair teams were in charge of repairing the remaining Jaegers after a tough fight, while the pilots headed to the meeting room with the leaders and their companions to discuss the matter of the axe. 10 minutes later, meeting room. Everyone could be seen gathered together while Triaxa didn't move away from him, and surprisingly for Issei, the yokai queen Yasaka was next to Henson who had a cast on his arm, and Kunu was next to Chuck who was playing with her hair. Odin, well brat, I'm really impressed that you managed to get the axe, he said as he watched Issei wield the axe. Issei, it wasn't easy. During the mission I had to take a double beating. Xerxes, the good thing is that you managed to find the axe. Now give it to us. We have to put it in a safe place. So. Issei, with all due respect, Xerxes, but you are the least qualified to save a great artifact like this, he said as he raised the axe. Seraphal, and what makes you believe that is? She said /asked just to see how Issei showed something on his hand, revealing a snake-shaped ring. Hey, that's mine. Issei, it was, he said while placing it on Triaxa, who gave a superior and mocking smile. Seraphal, why is everyone so mean to me? She complained in a chibi way while hugging one of Sona's legs. Sona, you're not a little girl anymore to be doing such ridiculous things, she complained as she shook her leg to get it off of her. Issei, leaving that aside, even if I gave them the axe of my own free will, I highly doubt they'd be able to touch it. Azazel, why do you say that? Issei, why did this axe choose me as its wielder, and no one but me can lift it? Xerxes, with all due respect, but I believe that. Odin, to tell the truth is true, he said, interrupting Xerxes. Legend says that when the axe of Ragnarok is wielded, only its bearer will be able to carry it, and no one else. But before anyone else could say anything, a hologram of Tendo appeared, drawing everyone's attention as confusion could be seen on his face. Penteco's, what's wrong, Mr. Choi? Tendu, I just detected 2 kaiju presences around the abyss. Penteco's, what category? Tendu, judging by their sizes they are category 4. Penteco's, okay, I want Gypsy, Gods of Ragnarok and Striker, he said as he addressed Issei with his new code name Jaeger while Tendo cut off the communication. Yasaka, Mr. Penteco's, Herc can't go, his arm is injured and we don't have any more Phoenix Tears for another 3 weeks. Penteco's, I'll handle that myself, for now get ready. Herc, Issei, I need you to accompany me, he said as those mentioned with left him. 30 minutes later, hangar. Several people could be seen walking back and forth preparing everything for the Jaeger deployment, while the leaders could only watch as everyone prepared for what could become the final battle that would define the fate of the Earth, since the only one Jaeger still left standing to fight were Gypsy Jaeger, Striker, and Coyote Tango, or as he was better known now, Gods of Ragnarok. "Chuck, hey Tendo, Tendo," he shouted, calling the aforementioned who was supervising. "Tendo, and your suit?" "Chuck, look, I need to talk to you." "Tendo, there's no time for that, to get ready." "Chuck, but I can't play Striker alone, Dad is hurt. Who's going to be my co-pilot?" But after asking that, the doors opened, revealing Issei, who was wearing his new armor, and Pentekos, who had a Jaeger pilot's suit, who walked until they were in front of their companions and the leaders. "Pentekos, it wasn't this tight the last time I wore it." "Issei, I told you to go exercise instead of lying on the couch," he said, earning a dirty look from Pentekos while the others tried to hold back their laughter. "Did I say it or think it?" "Mako, going back to that Jaeger will kill you." "Pentekos, not going back, he will kill us all. I have to do this and I need you to support me," he said while looking at Issei and Mako. "The cables agreed, everyone heard," he said, getting everyone's attention. Today there is not a man or a woman who is alone at this moment. Today we will face the monsters that stalk us, and we will end their lives. Today the apocalypse will be cancelled. After giving that great speech that will remain written in the pages of history, everyone gave a great shout and applause, supporting their heroes in this dangerous mission that will end the war they have been fighting for several years. Chapter 20. In the middle of the Pacific Ocean, 7 o'clock HRS, Ghost of Ragnarok, Gypsy Jaeger and Striker could be seen being transported by helicopters to the location of the Abyss, the portal from where the kaijus came out who were dedicated to making their lives impossible during this war. Being close to the location of the Abyss, the helicopters proceeded to release the Jaegers, who landed hard in the water to begin to advance as they prepared to dive and reach where the Abyss was. "Chuck, bridge closing floodgates to submerge us," he said as he began to close the floodgates of the Jaeger, as did Gypsy. "Raleigh, gates closed, ready to dive." Just like that, the three of them began to submerge themselves, slowly going deeper into the ocean, keeping their guard up in case anyone tried to take them by surprise. When they saw that they were beginning to reach the deepest and darkest part of the ocean, they turned on the lights to illuminate the path. Everything was silent and there was no sign of the enemy. In the Shatterdome, everyone was attentive to what could happen, but on the Tendo Bridge, Yasaka and Kuna saw the hologram where the signal of the three Jaegers was projected. "Stay tuned, these kaijus are bigger than the previous Category 4 ones we've faced. Codenames Reiju and Scunner. I communicate," seeing the slow and careful movement the Jaegers had. "Pentecost, understood, at about 400 meters we will jump." "Chuck, 400 meters? I can't see an inch ahead, how are we going to drop the bomb?" "Issei, calm down Chuck, I can see the cliff," he communicated as he started swinging his axe. Everything was quiet until out of nowhere a large figure passed quickly to his left, activating the motion sensors that the Jaegers had. "Tendu, sir, you have company." "Gypsy Reiju is stalking them at 9 o'clock," he communicated, causing the Jaegers to turn around only to see a disappearing stream. "Raleigh, there's nothing at 9. "Tendo, it's at 3 o'clock right next to Issei. This kaiju moves faster than any other," he said, watching as the kaiju signal appeared next to Issei. Issei turned to the side, seeing the same thing as Gypsy, just a fading stream. "Issei, I don't see anything. Tendu, this kaiju is faster than Odachi." "Chuck, focus guys, we're 3 meters from the Abyss," I communicated while in front of them there was a burning abyss. The three proceeded to descend from the reef where they were just a few meters from reaching the Abyss, but then the 2 Category 4 kaijus appeared in front of them, causing them to stop when they saw them. "Reiju, Scunner, Gypsy, Striker, Ghost, the 2 kaijus are at 12 right in front of you," he said, seeing how the Jaeger's signal stopped. "Chuck, what are you doing, Marshal?" "Pentecost, they stopped." "Why did they stop?" "Chuck, I don't care. We're just a few feet away from the Abyss." "Issei, something's not right, Chuck." Listen carefully, the kaijus aren't following you, so jump into the Abyss." "Don't do it," Newt shouted as he entered the bridge with Sherman, looking very tired and with paper covering one of his nostrils. "Blowing up the Abyss won't work." "Pentecost, what do you mean it won't work?" "Newt, Just because the chasm opens doesn't mean the bomb can get through. Sherman, neck of the abyss, read the kaiju's genetic code upon entering. Newt, they'll have to make the abyss think they're kaijus. Raleigh, and how the hell are we going to do that? Sherman, hold on tight to the kaiju and jump into the abyss. Newt, if they don't, the bomb will bounce and the mission will fail. Herc, okay, since you heard that, jump into the abyss now, he said before everyone heard an alert. Yasaka, what's going on? I asked, seeing another sign appear in the abyss. Tendo, a third kaiju signal appeared in the abyss. Newt, a triple event. Sherman, God was right. Pentecost, Herc, what category is it? Tendu, Category 5, he said in a serious manner, alarming almost everyone. Yasaka, it can't be. Kunu, this has to be a very bad joke, she said, hugging Herc. Herc, Psy Striker is a Category 5, the first one he communicated, alarming the Jaeger's pilots a little. The abyss began to intensify the flames it expelled, in addition to some purple and violet rays. A large figure began to emerge from the abyss that little by little was in front of Stryker, revealing its appearance, and roaring at him. Slattern. Raleigh, Stryker, we see him. We're right behind you. Standard 2-team formation, keep him busy while we come in from the other side. He said before being attacked by Scunner that he tried to ram him, but Gypsy managed to grab him by the horns and started headbutting him. Slattern began to spin his tentacles in a whirlwind, hitting Stryker, sending him flying until he crashed into a hydrothermal vent, while Gypsy was about to finish off Scunner if it weren't for the fact that Reiju surprised him from behind, ripping off his right arm, causing Scunner to take the opportunity to chew his left leg if it weren't for the fact that Gypsy activated the chain sword, piercing his head. Bad, let's carbonize this kaiju, he said as they proceeded to bring him closer to a hydrothermal vent, burning the entire side of his face, but he was still alive and managed to free himself. With Stryker, he was barely recovering from the tremendous blow he had received from Slattern, but without a doubt that blow had affected him a lot since he had managed to damage his chest in addition to causing several failures in the systems. Chuck, we're in trouble, sir. The hatch is damaged and we can't release the bomb. The weapons are working, but the case is badly damaged. Pentecost, we have to control the. I didn't finish saying when I saw how Slattern wanted to attack them. And I say wanted because being about to attack Stryker, the kaiju suddenly stopped by tightly holding the handle of Issei's axe, who wanted to decapitate him. Slattern managed to stop the blow before the blade of the axe hit his head, but the force was so much that he threw him to the ground, and that was taken advantage of by Issei, who got on top of him, preventing him from getting up. Issei, Stryker, go help Gypsy. I'll take care of this Category 5. Pentecost, understood, he said as they proceeded to retreat to where Gypsy was. Issei continued to struggle with Slattern until he grabbed him by the neck, sending him crashing into a reef. Ghost of Ragnarok got up again as if nothing had happened, watching as Slattern moved from one side to the other with great ease, stalking Issei while he was on guard since he didn't really know what a Category 5 could be capable of. And if we consider that they are underwater, an area where the kaiju has better mobility, it was obvious that Issei was at a disadvantage in this fight. Issei, well, at least this is going to be interesting and fun, he said as he slowly moved to the left while continuing to watch the kaiju's movements. Without a doubt, this battle will be one of the most difficult that Issei will fight, and that will decide the fate of both the human and supernatural world.
Let me know in the comments below if you guys want the next part. Also check out my other video that has been shown in left. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please like and share this video. And have a fantastic day. Bye.